I pestered the poor campus heartthrob for 3 years. I was a complete spoiled rich girl. He was always lukewarm towards me, neither saying he liked me nor that he hated me. It wasn't until my family went bankrupt, when I had the nerve to ask him to return the watch I had given him, his seemingly well-behaved sister, who had always encouraged me to pursue love, pushed me away. "Don't pester my future boyfriend if you don't have money, okay?" Only then did I know that the sister he had been taking good care of and showing concern for wasn't his biological sister, but his foster sister. The campus heartthrob who had always given me a cold shoulder actually obeyed her every word. He had been playing along with me for a full 3 years because of her. After being reborn, I went back to the day when I forcefully pursued the campus heartthrob. I hugged the arm of the wealthy young master who was engaged to me and walked straight past without even glancing at him. In this life, I don't want to love him anymore. However, the campus heartthrob, who was originally beaten until he was covered in bruises, opened his eyes with great difficulty and tightly grasped my ankle with regret and pain. 1. I stood on the rooftop and took a puff of my cigarette. The major debts of the company had all been transferred to my name in the past 2 months or so. For a full 73 days and 8 hours, I hardly had a full night's sleep. All I could think about when I opened or closed my eyes was how to raise funds. My mother passed away due to a stroke. My father was so devastated that he started drinking heavily. My elder brother was completely down and suffered from severe depression. I took on all the burdens, but no miracle happened. I was really just a spoiled rich girl. When it came to this critical moment, I could only think of one solution. After finishing the cigarette, my hands were a bit shaky. I couldn't help but open the chat window with Pei Guyan. The last message in it was still the good night he sent me by rote 2 months ago. I spent 100,000 yuan to get his WeChat account and 300,000 yuan to have him send me good morning and good night messages every day. But this routine had already ended because I couldn't help but slap his sister, Ji Qing. 2 months ago, I stared at the chat window, typed, and sent, Pei Guyan. I lit another cigarette and told myself that after finishing this cigarette, I really shouldn't hesitate anymore. The first minute, Pei Guyan didn't reply. While waiting, I boredly flipped through my contact list. They were all fair-weather friends. They all avoided me like the plague after they learned that my family had gone bankrupt. The few true friends I had gradually drifted away from me in the past few years when I was desperately chasing Pei Guyan. I had no one to talk to anymore. The second minute, I didn't indulge Pei Guyan. I called him over and over again, using the most disgusting ways I could think of. Pei Guyan, baby Pei, sweetheart Pei, handsome guy who looks like a big sweet potato with a butt so tilted that it can hold up the pyramid. After being a spoiled rich girl for 23 years, the only thing I was good at was flirting with others. The third minute, Pei Guyan finally couldn't stand it anymore and sent, Xin Yuzhu, stop being crazy. Okay, I smiled and took a fierce puff of the cigarette. What's wrong? We've tried all kinds of positions in bed. Are you being a hypocrite, Mr. Campus Heartthrob? Are you afraid that your girlfriend will check up on you? Pei Guyan was silent for a few seconds, and the message he sent was cold and heartless. Xin Yuzhu, Xiaoqing is my sister. You still haven't changed your habit of slandering others randomly with your young lady's temper. It's really disgusting, sister. 2 months ago, when I was so poor that I had no choice but to go to Pei Guyan and ask for the watch I had given him back, Ji Qing blocked me and pushed me down. At that time, she didn't say that. She said, Xin Yuzhu, you stupid rich second generation. Did you really think that my brother and I were from a reorganized family? We grew up together and like each other. You're just the first pot of gold on my brother's road to success. How many times in the past, when I couldn't figure out Pei Guyan's thoughts and was so tired that I wanted to give up, it was Ji Qing who pretended to be well-behaved and encouraged me. Sister Yuzhu, my brother is just cold on the outside but warm on the inside. Just chase him boldly and be more generous. He will definitely fall for someone like you. But after I lost my money, she suddenly changed her attitude. It turned out that all of this was just their couple's role-playing. I was stupid, and I admit it. Money is the best shelter in the world. I was too rich before, and my parents and elder brother loved me too much, so I didn't strive for progress. I deserved to be deceived. It's just, the cigarette was almost finished. I didn't have the time to argue with Pei Guyan about his lies. Holding on to the last bit of hope, I asked, Hey, Pei Guyan, can you return that Rolex Submariner I gave you? He disliked that watch the most and never wore it. He said it made him look like an uneducated upstart. Pei Guyan hesitated. What trick are you playing now? Do you still want to deceive me into meeting you, Shin-Yuju? Ever since you bullied my sister, I don't want to see you again, I said. It's okay if we don't meet, you can send it to me through someone else. Pei Guyan didn't say anything for a long time. And there was only a short cigarette but left of my cigarette. I didn't have time anymore. I comforted myself that even if I got the watch back, it would just be a drop in the bucket. It didn't matter anymore. Pei Guyan, okay, tell me an address, and I'll send it to you by express delivery. I sighed. Forget it then, it's too late. Pei Guyan, Shin-Yuju, what on earth do you mean? I took the last puff of the cigarette forcefully. The cigarette but was burned so short that it almost burned my lips. I never thought that one day I would use this stingy way of smoking. I stood up and made my last request to Pei Guyan. Hey, Pei Guyan, say goodnight to me one more time. Pei Guyan said, why should I? I stared at those 3 words and unexpectedly found that my heart still ached. Sigh, loving him was really a painful thing. Fortunately, I wouldn't have to suffer from this pain anymore. I didn't reply. I stuffed my phone into my pocket and took a deep breath. Then, without hesitation, I jumped off the tall building. I knew that 5 minutes later, my father and elder brother would receive a timed text message. Daughter/sister is incompetent and can't revive the company. But don't worry, when a person dies, the debts are cleared. You can live well from now on. By the way, the little niece is so cute. Teach her to study hard and make a name for herself. Don't be like me. I closed my eyes. In the next life, I don't want to be a spoiled rich girl anymore. I don't want to hit anyone's wall of resistance anymore, not even until my head bleeds. 2. After a severe bout of dizziness, I tried my best to open my heavy eyelids. Then, I was stunned. The surroundings were neither the white walls of a hospital ward nor the burly men from a debt collection company. There was only a bustling entertainment club filled with feasting and revelry, a world of luxury and debauchery. I slowly lowered my head and saw the out-of-season Chanel haute couture dress I was wearing, which was from 3 years ago, and I was filled with confusion. You're going a bit too far. I know you don't want to come to this blind date, but at least pretend a bit. Why are you even starting to play with your fingers while looking down? Is what I'm saying that boring? A man's somewhat lazy voice came from in front of me. I looked up. It turned out to be Su Mingluan, the eldest son of the Su family. 3 years ago, we went on a blind date. I was stunned. I had actually been reborn back to 3 years ago. Suddenly, there was a commotion outside the window. There were people scolding, and the sounds of punching and kicking. I remembered everything. In my previous life, I heard this commotion. Relying on my status as the young lady of the Shin family, I went to see what was happening. After that, I fell in love at first sight with Pei Guyan, who was being beaten up. I spent money to settle the matter with the guests who were beating him up. Unfortunately, my subordinates were too considerate and provided a one-stop service. Not only did they treat Pei Guyan's injuries, but they also cleaned him up, got him drunk, and sent him to my bed, unaware of the truth. I thought that Pei Guyan had offered himself to me out of gratitude, so I readily accepted without hesitation. Only later did I find out that he deeply resented me because he thought I had forced myself on him. In this life, I don't want to get involved in this ill-fated relationship again. Miss Shen, what a big commotion. Do you want to go and take a look? Su Mingluan leaned forward with great interest. I lowered my head to eat. No, let's just chat. Su Mingluan stared at me in surprise. Well, I'm truly honored, but for some reason, the commotion this time was even louder. Pei Guyan, dressed in a waiter's uniform, pushed the security guards aside and rushed into the VIP area as if he was running for his life. His nose was broken, and he was covered in blood. He seemed to be stunned and hit the corner of our table, making the glass cup hum. Damn it, you little bastard, you still dare to run. You broke my watch, and if you don't have the money to pay for it, you'll have to pay with your poor life. A drunken guest cursed as he walked in and was surrounded by the security guards. The scene was chaotic, but after Pei Guyan, who was fleeing for his life, leaned against the table under me, he remained motionless as if he had found a shelter. The injured him curled up at the corner of my table, and his gasps made his chest rise and fall. He was flustered and kept wiping the blood with his hands, trying his best to make his face a bit cleaner. Su Mingluan stood up. He glanced at me and, very dramatically, spread his hands towards Pei Guyan and gave me a gentlemanly bow. It's up to you. I was speechless. 3 years ago, I was indeed a well-known kind-hearted person in the circle, especially fond of rescuing handsome guys. Someone had made sarcastic remarks that I was a modern version of Shui Pan, the female character. At that time, I hadn't even read Dream of the Red Chamber and didn't know that I was being compared to the foolish Shui Pan. I gently shook my head at Su Mingluan. Stood up, and held his arm tightly. Let's go, it's too noisy here. Su Mingluan looked at me in surprise. I didn't notice that Pei Guyan, who was curled up at the corner of my table, also froze in disbelief. I didn't even look at him. I pulled Su Mingluan and bypassed Pei Guyan. The moment I took my first step, someone suddenly grabbed my ankle tightly. Pei Guyan supported himself with one hand on the ground and held my ankle firmly with the other hand, covered in blood and almost fainting. He still refused to let go. His cold voice was stubborn, yet carried a hint of unspoken regret. Miss, don't you want to save me? 3. His voice was deep and still sounded so pleasant. In my previous life, I would have been overjoyed if he had said one more word to me, but now, even hearing a single word from Pei Guyan made me feel creeped out and in great pain. I stood there stiffly, seeing that I didn't say anything. Pei Guyan called out softly again, this time. His voice was even more stubborn and pitiful. Miss, I lifted my foot and tried to break free from him. He didn't expect my reaction. He tried his best to raise his head, picked up the hot towel he used to wipe his hands, and regardless of the pain, wiped his face vigorously. Wait, look at my face. In my previous life, it was because of this fleeting glance that I fell in love with him at first sight. From then on, I was almost entangled with him for 3 years. As if we were destined to be at odds with each other, I lowered my head, and my eyes lightly landed on Pei Guyan's face. I calmly moved my eyes away, looking at him as indifferently as I would look at an ordinary tree. There was no surprise like in my previous life, and I didn't exclaim in admiration, "You're so handsome. Do you want to fall in love with me?" Pei Guyan couldn't believe it. While he was in a daze, Su Mingluan grabbed his wrist and forced him to let go because of the pain. You scared her. Su Mingluan frowned and said. Pei Guyan finally came to his senses and glanced at him. His eyes suddenly turned cold. Su Mingluan, I was a bit surprised. How could Pei Guyan know Su Mingluan now? In my previous life, even after he was entangled with me, he always maintained an indifferent attitude and never showed any interest in my social circle, let alone remembered the blind date partner I casually mentioned. I lowered my head. There was already a mottled blood-stained handprint on my ankle where the black high-heeled shoe strap was tied. Pei Guyan really grabbed me hard. I frowned. Pei Guyan looked at me expressionlessly, his eyes dark and hiding some unknown desire. I said softly, "It's so dirty." This sentence was like a punch hitting Pei Guyan's face. The curve of his mouth froze instantly. He stared at me in a daze. What did you say? I didn't want to look at him. I bent down to pick up the towel to wipe it. Su Mingluan was very gentlemanly, considering that it was inconvenient for me to bend down in a dress. He squatted down halfway and wiped Pei Guyan's blood cleanly. I hugged Su Mingluan's arm and said in a low voice, "Let's go. In this life, I won't make the same mistake again. I will stay as far away from Pei Guyan as possible." 4. There was a troublesome guest at the club, and the waiters were in a rush. Many guests also chose to leave. For a while, the doorman in charge of parking the cars was extremely busy. While we were waiting for the car, after asking for my opinion, Su Mingluan lit a cigarette. The light of the fire illuminated his cynical eyebrows and eyes. I had looked at this face for more than 10 years. I thought I had seen enough of it and was tired of it, but unexpectedly, after such a long separation, when I started over, I found that he was actually no less good-looking than Pei Guyan. In my previous life, tonight was the last time we met. After tonight, I met Pei Guyan. I strongly refused my parents' idea of having me continue with the blind dates. Su Mingluan and I gradually drifted apart. In fact, it wasn't just because I fell in love with Pei Guyan, it was also because I was a bit jealous of Su Mingluan at that time. I was jealous of his intelligence. I was jealous that he was the heir apparent as the eldest son, while I was just a rich second generation who was born only to eat, drink, and have fun. I used to think that being an heir was a light and glorious, yet easy honor, but I didn't expect that when the responsibility really fell on my shoulders, it made me dizzy and miserable. Because of this, in this life, I have let go of a lot of my feelings towards Su Mingluan. I suddenly said, "Let me ask you something. Do you know what a limited liability company is?" Su Mingluan, who was smoking, was suddenly choked. He coughed and asked me in disbelief, "Shinyuju, are you sick? Are you sure you want to ask me about business knowledge instead of limited edition luxury goods?" Me, tell me or not, it's up to you. Su Mingluan smiled and moved my hand aside, looking very casual. "Okay, since Miss Shin suddenly wants to study, Sue, will definitely accompany you to the end. We were chatting when we were suddenly interrupted. Shin, Yuju, wow, you're Shin Yuju from the School of Business at University A. Right, we're from the same school. I'm good friends with your roommate, my name is Ji Qing. When I heard this voice, my eyelids suddenly twitched. When I turned my head, Ji Qing was supporting the injured Pei Guyan and eagerly stretched out her hand towards me. This is my brother, Pei Guyan, the campus heartthrob of University A. Ha ha ha. I smoked indifferently, my face expressionless. Following my gaze, Pei Guyan saw his arm that was hooked by Ji Qing. He pursed his lips and gently pulled his hand away. Ji Qing's smile froze for a moment. She playfully patted Pei Guyan. Brother, you can't be like this. You forget about your sister when you see a beautiful woman. I remember that in my previous life, she always liked to say things like this, saying that she wasn't as pretty as me and that she didn't look as much like a lady from a prestigious family as I did. I used to foolishly think that she was speaking well of me in front of Pei Guyan. Later, I realized that she just wanted to hear Pei Guyan's cold and disdainful reply, that I was just average looking and didn't look like a lady from a prestigious family. He thought I was just a superficial rich second generation, but strangely, this time, Pei Guyan didn't speak up to deny it. Everything fell into silence. Ji Qing had to get back to the point. She asked cautiously, classmate Yuju, you're so rich and beautiful. Can you please help my brother? He accidentally broke a guest's watch. And it seems to cost around 100,000 yuan. We poor college students really don't have that kind of money. Can you, for the sake of being classmates, give us a hand? Pei Guyan looked at me without saying a word. He, who was stubborn and aloof, didn't speak up to stop her. Instead, he stared at my face, falling into a strange trance. Ji Qing, it doesn't matter if you don't want to lend us the money. Then can you please say a few words to the manager and ask him not to fire my brother? We really need this job. Please, just say a word. I looked at them. It was really ridiculous. In my previous life, when Ji Qing and I had a falling out, she repeatedly said that they didn't need my help at all in the first place. It was me who was being persistent and pestering Pei Guyan, so I deserved to be let down. But in this life, why did she come to me on her own initiative when I hadn't even taken action? I looked at her indifferently. I refuse. Ji Qing's smile disappeared. She was stunned and started to stammer out explanations. Sister Yuju, aren't you the kindest person usually? I heard that you gave someone 10,000 yuan just because your roommate helped you with your homework, and that person who asked you to help their family member find a job. Can you do this small favor? I smiled and interrupted her unceremoniously, softly uttering 3 words, why should I? Before Ji Qing could react, Pei Guyan beside her changed his expression first. It seemed that the 3 words why should I hit his most painful and nightmarish sore spot. He turned pale, looking at me in disbelief, his body trembling slightly. Stop talking, he said softly, the car is here, Su Mingluan said at the same time. I stared at Pei Guyan in confusion and then got into Su Mingluan's car without hesitation. Su Mingluan sensed my strangeness. He glanced at me. Do you know him? I shook my head. Not really, Su Mingluan said, since we grew up together. Let me give you some advice. You and him are not from the same world. Don't mess with him too much. I looked at him. Su Mingluan propped his arm on the car window, and under his cynical expression was a cold and cruel objectivity. I said softly, thank you. Su Mingluan shook his head. I also have my own ulterior motives. His eyes suddenly fixed on me, and he repeated, Yuju, I also have my own ulterior motives. What were his ulterior motives? I said. Su Mingluan, you want to marry me, don't you? Su Mingluan smiled. Our conditions are very suitable, aren't they? I looked at him quietly. In my previous life, when my family went bankrupt, Su Mingluan was one of the few people who took the initiative to help. However, at that time, the situation was already too difficult to reverse, and it was too late. It seemed that God specifically made me return to this point in time to make up for some regrets. I nodded. Okay. Su Mingluan was a bit surprised. Then how about having the engagement banquet in 7 days? I said. So soon? Su Mingluan nodded and smiled. Yes, I'm in a hurry. I'm afraid you'll be snatched away by some inexplicable person. 5. I told my parents that I had a favorable impression of the person I went on a blind date with, and they were very happy. They enthusiastically started making arrangements for the engagement banquet. My mother let out a sigh of relief and muttered to herself, now I can rest assured. I looked at her quietly and suddenly understood the details that I had overlooked in my previous life. Perhaps, the elders had already vaguely anticipated the disaster that would happen 3 years later. Even my mother might have already known that she was ill, so she was so eager to see me get married, she was afraid that after she died, no one would be able to take care of me. But for me, the significance of the arranged marriage was not just that I didn't have that much confidence in my own abilities. I didn't know if, after studying hard for 3 years, I could instantly become an elite who could turn this situation around. Therefore, I needed a smart partner, a partner who was bound to me by a legal and valid contract. Having been reborn, Pagayan was no longer the center of my world. I was concerned about my mother's illness and started supervising her to have regular checkups and pay attention to her diet. I also took the initiative to suggest going to the company for training. My father looked at me with pride, and my mother exclaimed happily, "Baby has really grown up and is now caring about her mother." My brother raised his eyebrows and, pretending to be the head of the family, said seriously, "If you want to get some experience, you can't cry. Internships are very hard, and you have to get up early every day." But less than a minute later, he couldn't keep up the act. "It doesn't matter if you can't get up. Brother will get you an empty office. You can decorate it however you like." Okay, I looked at them, and my eyes involuntarily turned red. They really loved me and didn't want me to encounter anything that required me to work hard and persevere in my life. They wanted me to be a carefree princess for the rest of my life. They were willing to bear all the hardships and difficulties for me. However, after going through my previous life, I realized that this was wrong. No one could bear everything for a lifetime. I had to become independent. They protected me, and I also needed to be smarter to protect them. I picked up the textbooks that I had neglected for a long time and took the initiative to move into the university dormitory. However, this time, when I was in professional courses class, my classmates looked at me with some strange expressions. I turned my head and saw Pagayan with bruises on his face. He took the initiative to sit next to me. His voice was bitter. "Shinyuju, long time no see." 6. I stared at him as if he were a stranger. "Is there something wrong, classmate?" Pagayan was stung by my distant gaze. His eyelids fluttered slightly, and his expression remained cold. "Well, do you need someone to help you with your studies? I'm really good at economics," he said clumsily. I took a deep breath to control myself. "Classmate, aren't you from the Department of Biology?" Pagayan's eyes suddenly lit up. "You still remember?" I frowned and said nothing, burying myself in reading the book. Pagayan stared at me, his voice getting softer. "Although I'm not from the School of Business, I can learn." His Adam's apple bobbed. He had an expressionless face, but he stuttered so much that the tips of his ears turned red. "I can also learn other things." I looked at him in disbelief. "What things?" Pagayan lowered his eyes, his gaze complicated. "All the things you like." I was stunned when I heard this. I really didn't have that much confidence to think that just because of my looks, Pagayan 3 years ago would give up his pride and humbly pursue me. So, there was only one possibility. I turned cold and forced myself to control my anger, doing my best to stay calm. But Pagayan still wouldn't let me go. He said softly, "You know, right?" I pretended not to hear him. The teacher had already entered the classroom, and the first day of my brand new life was about to begin. But Pagayan persisted. He whispered, "Yuju, I owe you a good night." These words made me freeze instantly. In a trance, I seemed to be back on that tall building where the wind was strong and cold. I looked into the distance in despair, lit my last match, and the reply I got was an even colder and more desolate hell. I finally had to admit that Pagayan, the one who remembered all my embarrassing and humble moments of pursuing love, he had also been reborn. My tongue was burning. I gritted my teeth and said, "What on earth do you want?" Pagayan said, "Yuju, I didn't know that your family went bankrupt at that time. I regret treating you like that. I also forgive you for your hostility towards my sister. Let's start over. Let's be together again like in the previous life." Okay. 7. The teacher had already started the class. I was forced to shut up. I squeezed my pen tightly. The presence of Pagayan beside me was really unbearable. Finally, those 90 minutes of torment passed, and I got up and left without hesitation. Pagayan followed closely behind me. When we reached the stairwell, he grabbed my hand forcefully. "Yuju." I couldn't stand it anymore and slapped him hard. "Get lost." Pagayan's head swayed, but he didn't let go. I was furious and slapped him twice more. "Get lost. Why do you think you can forgive me?" The students passing by had heard the commotion and were secretly stopping to watch. I felt ashamed. Why was my first day of trying not to be a spoiled rich girl ruined by him again? Pagayan's face, which already had bruises, now had slap marks and started to swell. but what's hateful is, he was still good-looking, with red eyes. He looked like a vulnerable male model. Pagayan pursed his lips tightly. He held me firmly with both hands and finally couldn't hold back either. The pretense of trying his best to stay calm was completely torn apart. He stared at me. Why do I think I can forgive you? You tell me why. You kept saying that you loved me, but after being reborn, you immediately latched onto another man. I laughed out of anger. Pagayan showed his jealousy. You don't even look at me anymore, now that you have a new lover. You don't even glance at me. What's going on? After playing with me for 3 years in the previous life, are you bored and looking for something new? I was in disbelief. How dare you slander me, Pagayan? I fawned over you for 3 years while you kept giving me the cold shoulder. Who was playing with whom exactly? Pagayan couldn't stand it anymore. It was you. You got me drunk. You seduced me. Your love was incredibly cheap. You constantly coaxed me, said those shameless words, and tortured me. You humiliated me with money. The most hateful thing is, he was so angry that he couldn't speak. The corners of his eyes were red and swollen. He stared at me fiercely, as if he wanted to bite a piece of my flesh. Pagayan clenched his teeth with all his might to calm his breathing, but he still couldn't help letting out a furious growl. The most hateful thing is, why did you keep me in the dark? Why did you ask me to send you a good night message before you jumped off the building, Shinyuju? It was 8 o'clock in the morning. How could I not think that you were playing with me? That's just how you are. You've always been like this. You wouldn't even let me go when you died. You had to drag me to hell with you and make me suffer. I sneered. Stop pretending. What suffering are you talking about? Although I, Shinyuju, am a spoiled rich girl, I've never done anything heartless like forcing others. Didn't I ask you? I asked you countless times if you liked me. If you didn't like me, you could have said so. If you hated me so much, you could have said it out loud. What did I seduce you with? What did I coax you with? It was clearly you who neither took the initiative nor refused. You and your foster sister colluded to treat me like an ATM machine and deceive me. Damn it. Pagayan flinched as if he had been pricked by a needle. He wanted to refute, but his excessive pride still made it difficult for him to confess his true feelings. He stalemated, enunciating each word with effort. It's not like what you think. I looked at him coldly. When my mother was in the hospital and we were in urgent need of money, I was so anxious that I called you but couldn't reach you. When I knocked on the door, I found that the apartment I bought for you had become the love nest for you and Ji Qing. I just wanted to get back a watch to pawn for money. Ji Qing looked at me coldly and mocked me, then pushed me away. I was so angry that I slapped her. That slap happened to be seen by you, and you still think I have hostility towards her until now. Pagayan's expression suddenly changed. His face turned as white as paper. What did you say? I said, so. Was it all my misunderstanding? Isn't my Rolex Submariner with you? Didn't Ji Qing become the mistress of that apartment? Didn't you look at me coldly? Didn't you always take Ji Qing's side whenever something happened? Every single thing. How could I have wronged you so much? Pagayan, in the end, all you wanted was to have it both ways and earn money without sacrificing your dignity. You said I humiliated you with money. So why the hell did you accept it? I suddenly pushed away the stunned him. He wasn't prepared and was pushed against the wall by me. I walked away in big strides, but I hadn't gone far when he caught up with me. Pagayan said in a low voice, why wouldn't she give you the watch? Xiaoqing wouldn't do such a thing. Is there some misunderstanding? Misunderstanding your ass. I couldn't stand it anymore and kicked him. Pagayan let out a whimper and covered his stomach, but he still gritted his teeth and held on to me. Xiaozhu. Please, wait a moment. It was rare for the arrogant him to show such a flustered and vulnerable look, but I didn't care anymore. Yuzhu. I turned around when I heard the voice. Su Mingluan was holding the car key on his index finger and walking towards me. The savior I had messaged for during class arrived in time. I said to him, take me away. Su Mingluan immediately blocked Pagayan, who still wanted to pester me. He took a closer look at Pagayan and, not surprised, said, why is it you again? You can't keep clinging to the same person when trying to climb up the social ladder. She's my fiancé now. Pagayan, who had been persistent and even glared at Su Mingluan with caution, suddenly changed his expression. He looked at me in disbelief. He's lying. I looked at him as if I were looking at those absurd years of mine. Pagayan, I've really given up on you. Stop pestering me. Pagayan was devastated. This was the first time in all these years that I had seen him so emotionally broken. He looked at me with red eyes, his lips opening and closing. In the end, he only said 3 words, impossible. what's impossible about that? Does he, Pei Guyan, really think he's an incredibly wonderful person in the world and that I can't live without him? Leaning against the car window, I sank deep into the memories of the past. In my previous life, at our first meeting, I left my blind date behind, wiped the blood off his face for him, and took off the watch on my wrist to pay off his debt. At our second meeting, he lay on the hotel bed with a blank look in his eyes, staring at me with a red face and not moving at all. That night, Pei Guyan wasn't actually as passive and helpless as he claimed. If someone is truly drunk, they can't even get up, so how could he have done those things by himself? Later, he was sometimes cold and sometimes warm towards me. He said he had to work part-time and his studies were heavy, but even the occasional dates he promised would always be cancelled because of his sister Ji Qing's minor illnesses. Only then did I vaguely realize that in Pei Guyan's heart, his sister's status was much higher than mine, much higher, far higher. At that time, I was someone who always got what I wanted and had never suffered, encouraged by Ji Qing and deceived by Pei Guyan's ambiguous attitude. I always thought that if I tried hard enough and took a gamble, I would definitely make him fall in love with me too, an innocent rich girl who put all her thoughts into love. Thinking about it now, I was really naive back then. Every time I think of Pei Guyan, the stabbing pain in my chest has become numb and I feel nothing. I feel as if I'm peeking into someone else's life through a layer of fog. I will never like Pei Guyan again, Su Mingluan suddenly said. If there's anything that makes you unhappy, you can tell me. I looked up. What? He looked at me calmly, as if he had guessed something. Su Mingluan smiled and explained, although our marriage is a business arrangement, I think I should still fulfill the basic responsibilities of a fiancé. He added, however, speaking of which, I was really a bit surprised when you agreed to marry me. Yuju, you don't seem like someone who would follow the rules. I said, then what do I seem like? Su Mingluan, in the past, you were a bit gullible and kind-hearted, but you were also very passionate. You would definitely do whatever you wanted to do. I thought that one day you would have a big fight with your family and then go in search of your own love. I fell silent, thinking of my previous life when I was bruised and battered. I couldn't help but let out a silent bitter laugh. If I hadn't left that blind date early in my previous life and had instead listened to more of Su Mingluan's wise words, maybe I wouldn't have ended up in that situation. Su Mingluan, I know you don't have much strong affection for me. What about you? Su Mingluan shrugged. We grew up together, although we're of similar age. I always think of you as a silly little sister. However, I like you very much, but for someone like me, liking someone may not take up the majority of my life. Su Mingluan pointed out, love is just a social relationship, a fragile chain that, in most cases, needs to rely on money, honor, and emotional value to exist, and sometimes, even when all those conditions don't disappear, it will sadly fade away silently over time, but interests are solid and eternal. It sounds like you're very pessimistic about love, then why do you still want to marry me? Su Mingluan smiled. It's not pessimism, but objectivity. The reason why I want to marry you is basically the same as the reason why you're willing to marry me. We're both wealthy children who grew up under the protection of our families. We've spent a lot of money and enjoyed many privileges that ordinary people can't have even after a lifetime of hard work, so it's time for us to give something back to our families. At this point, talking about pursuing love or freedom is just the willful behavior of a child. Then I wish us a pleasant cooperation, Su Mingluan gently added, but I also want to make one thing clear, although I'm a pure rationalist, I'm not a heartless capitalist either. There's a little bit of humanity in my heart, and there's a small part of that humanity that belongs to love, and it's called Xinyuju. Although that part isn't big, I hope Miss Shen, who is used to seeing good things, will accept it. Hearing his extremely candid words, I couldn't help but laugh. 9. On the day of my engagement to Su Mingluan, Pei Guyan also came. He stared fixedly at the engagement flower arrangements and posters outside the hotel until his eyes turned red. None of this is real. She clearly likes me. He was extremely unwilling and pushed the flower baskets away insanely. Before he could fully vent his emotions, he was forcefully pressed to the ground by the security guards. Ji Qing's face turned pale and then red. She didn't have the memories of the previous life and didn't understand why all of a sudden, the man who had been filled with her in his heart and eyes would suddenly see her true colors and be so cold towards her. She also didn't understand why Pei Guyan would suddenly pester another woman as if he had gone crazy. She staggered over to help him up, but Pei Guyan pushed her away. Ji-Ching finally couldn't hold back. Brother, why are you pestering a woman who doesn't like you? This is really unseemly. Pei Guyan finally looked up at her. You also know that this kind of thing is embarrassing. Then why did you lie to her behind my back? Make her lose all face by chasing after me, just to make fun of her. Ji-Ching was stunned. Who are you talking about? Pei Guyan's chest heaved violently. He stared at her, at this person who hadn't committed any mistakes yet, and it was like punching into cotton. He felt a sense of powerless irritability. This was a curse. Heaven had made him go back to the starting point of the story, but didn't give him any chance to atone for his mistakes. He could only helplessly watch those good opportunities slip through his fingers and could only hate the person who hadn't made any mistakes yet. Pei Guyan felt as if he had fallen into a stagnant lake. He weakly waved his hand at Ji-Ching. Don't call me brother anymore. We're just neighbors who played together when we were children. Ji-Ching, I don't want to see you again in the future. He turned around and looked at the cold-faced security guards surrounding him. Each of them had a look of vigilance and contempt, as if they thought he was some kind of person who hated the rich and deliberately came to cause trouble. Pei Guyan then realized that if I didn't love him, he couldn't enter my world at all. In the previous life, his indifference, his arrogance, and even his pretended ambiguity were all just the power I gave him because I liked him. He couldn't stand it anymore. All his previous indifference disappeared, and filled with regret. He knelt on the ground and growled, Shin Yuzhu, come out, Shin Yuzhu. When I appeared in front of him wearing the engagement dress, he suddenly couldn't say anything. He looked at me gently and said with great difficulty, Shin Yuzhu, what if I said that I actually fell in love with you before I even realized it? I couldn't help but open the chat window with Pei Guyan. The last message in it was still the good night he sent me by rote 2 months ago. This sentence was like cutting with a knife and removing the bones. It was as if his last backbone was being pulled out bloodily. He had no other way left. I lowered my head and said softly, Pei Guyan, you think your love is precious, but I don't need it anymore. I said distantly, please leave. If you dare to appear in front of me again, I'll ask the security guards to escort you out. Pei Guyan's pupils shrank. He stared blankly at my departing figure. Then buried his head deeply and let out a very faint sob. 10. I walked back to the banquet hall. Su Mingluan was chatting happily with my brother. When he saw me, he handed me a glass of champagne. Leaning down, he whispered with a hint of faint, unnoticeable jealousy, there really are people trying to snatch you away. Fortunately, I got engaged early. I smiled and shook my head. He asked softly, who was that person? I replied calmly, just someone I don't know well. The grudges of the previous life are now the dust of this life. From then on, my brand new life was just beginning. Story 2. When I woke up, I was told that I had been in a vegetative state for 5 years. At the time of my car accident, Wan Zekan was at his lowest and loved me the most. During my deep sleep, I became his eternal unrequited love. Now that I've awakened, Wan Zekan has achieved great success. It seems I'm now somewhat superfluous. I looked towards Wan Zekan at the foot of the bed. His eyes read as he murmured, Azzy. Upon hearing the news of my awakening, he had cut short a board meeting and rushed to the hospital. Then I turned to the secretary at the door, forcing a smile, her lips pale from biting them. Azzy, do you remember me? Wan Zekan tentatively reached out his hand as if I were a fragile object. I nodded and pointed towards the door. That girl at the door looks a lot like me. Is she my long-lost sister? Wan Zekan's hand stiffened instantly, however. The girl at the door stepped forward, managing a smile. Mrs. Wan, hello, my name is Wen Xiaowen. I am Mr. Ruan's secretary. By the end, when Xiaowen could no longer hold back her tears, covering her mouth as she quickly ran out of the room, Xiaowen, Wan Zekan instinctively called out before starting to follow her, then remembered I was still there. It's okay, I nearly had the words generous written across my face. You must have important work matters to discuss, go after her. Wan Zekan stared at me, his dark eyes swirling with complexity, but he eventually chased after her. Watching his retreating figure, my heart gradually cooled. I reached out and grabbed the little boy playing games at the bedside. And you're in trouble. Are you the future protagonist who forces the heroine to undergo kidney removal and corneal donations? My expression was fierce. Did your father raise you according to the criminal law? The boy, as beautiful as a porcelain doll, pushed me away. Old lady, I command you to let go. I paused, then scoffed, pulling out the 4 and getting out of bed, ready to arm myself. The hunt began. I had been asleep for 5 years and had only one dream. In the dream, it was like reading a novel. and my son Wonyi was the novel's ruthless, tyrannical male lead, due to his mother's early death and his father's favoritism towards his stepmother. Wonyi grew up lacking love and became warped, killing the heroine in the name of love, achieving a realistic version of chasing his wife to the crematorium. I cursed for 5 years in my dream, perhaps because my curses were too filthy. I, who was supposed to die in my sleep according to the plot, suddenly woke up. Comparing timelines, I had 1 year left before the plot's appointed death. I had a feeling I couldn't escape the fate set by the novel, that I would still meet my end. I sighed deeply. Alright then, I'll use this year to try and correct Wonyi, as a gift to the future heroine from her mother-in-law. So when Wanzekin rushed back to the room, he saw me with one hand on my hip and the other holding a shoe, while Wonyi was in the corner, sobbing, his little behind covered in shoe prints. Wanzekin froze in the doorway for 2 seconds. Seeing his father, Wonyi tried to hold back his tears, stubbornly turning his little face away. But the hope in his eyes was unmistakable. He was hoping his father would rescue him from this crazy woman, but his hopes were dashed. Wanzekin didn't even glance at Wonyi, walking straight over to scoop me up, barefoot. Wanzekin carried me back to bed, his eyes full of concern. Azzy, you've just woken up, your body is still weak. Just call the nurse if you need anything. In the corner, Wonyi's dark eyes dimmed further. His little fists clenched at his sides. TSK. I pushed Wanzekin away, jumped off the bed, and scooped Wonyi into my arms. Is this how you've treated my son these 5 years? How can you be as indifferent as air? As I spoke, my anger grew. Do you still have the nerve to feign affection in front of me? You enjoy the process of having children but refuse to take on the responsibility. Wanzekin was stunned, unaccustomed to seeing the fragile item in his mind suddenly transform into a sharp weapon attacking him. Mrs. Wan, please don't say that. At that moment, Wen Xiaowen, with tears streaking her face, rushed in. Mr. Wan has been working tirelessly for you and young Master Wan. That's why he sometimes neglects the young master, but Mr. Wan often drinks until he gets gastric bleeding and works overtime until late at night. I've seen all this with my own eyes. She took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. Madam, what I am about to say might offend you. But I still have to say that for the past 5 years, it has been Mr. Wan struggling alone, while you've just been lying here comfortably. You still misunderstand Mr. Wan, and it truly disheartens people. I raised an eyebrow. What a fine example of a man's flower of interpretation. Wanzekin looked at Wen Xiaowen with surprise and emotion in his eyes, as if for the first time seeing through her skin, similar to mine, to the unique heart within. As for me just lying here comfortably, I laughed. Miss Wen, guess why I was in a car accident and became comatose? Guess whose life I risked mine to save? Wanzekin's face turned pale, his eyes filled with guilt. But Wen Xiaowen was not yet defeated, she argued. But even so, that was 5 years ago. Even if you saved Mr. Wan, you can't keep morally blackmailing him like this. How am I morally blackmailing him? I was also tired. You speak without thinking and lack logic. It's simply a waste of my life. Nurse, get her out. She's polluting the air around me. Azzy, how can you? Wanzekin frowned, not understanding how his gentle and unassuming beloved had turned into such a shrew. And I treated everyone the same. Enough talk, you can leave too. Wanzekin eventually left, though he didn't show anger. His eyes were full of disappointment. I didn't care much, and lifted Wonyi onto the bed, rubbing his head. Son, what game were you playing just now? My mix of sternness and sweetness left him extremely uncomfortable. Seizing the opportunity, Wonyi jumped out of my arms and picked up his game console. War of Sanctum, it can be played on the computer too. I responded with an oh. Is it fun? Wonyi's ears turned red as he coolly judged. Just a way to pass the time. That sounded like something a typical CEO from a novel would say, but you're only 7 years old. Starting to pass time now. Don't you think it's a bit too early? Thinking this, I pressed the call button, asking the nurse to bring 2 high-performance computers. What are you doing? Wonyi asked warily, like a little black cat with its fur on end. Just passing time with you. I shrugged. Your mom still needs to stay in the hospital for observation. We can't just sit and stare at each other. The nurse brought the computers and the main units, but there weren't enough sockets. Just unplug my oxygen machine. I casually waved. No. Wonyi instinctively protested. I felt reassured. The kid wasn't completely heartless after all. Then I got out of bed and unplugged my own oxygen machine myself. Wonyi, don't ask. it's just the rebellious phase of an old mother. Once the game was installed, Wonyi logged in to continue his mission, while I started creating an account under the guidance for newbies. This massive online game called War of Sanctum had 3 major races: humans, demons, and spirits. Humans could ascend to immortals or fall to demons, and within the demon and spirit races, there were over 100 professions to choose from. I was dazzled by the choices and consulted, "Son, what race are you?" "That's not called a race." Wonyi, focused on his screen, looked unexpectedly cool even though he was only a 7-year-old. He said, "I'm a demon, my profession is war chariot." "You're a car." I was surprised. Wonyi rolled his eyes in annoyance. "Not an actual car, but like the chariot in chess." "Wow, that's so cool." While praising him, I gave him a light knock on the head and said, "Don't roll your eyes when talking to someone, it's rude." "What are you doing?" Wonyi covered his head and turned away, his hand leaving the keyboard, and the battle tank he was controlling was immediately killed by a monster. Wonyi pursed his lips, clearly angry but not daring to speak out. "Sorry, I won't knock on you again when you're in battle." I immediately apologized, then added, "I'll save it all up and settle after you're done fighting." Perhaps never having had someone care so much about his feelings, Wonyi was stunned for a while, then turned his head awkwardly and said, "It's okay." In the end, I chose to play as a plain-looking human and decided to follow the path of cultivating and healing. Just as I had completed a quest in the newbie village and was about to hand over the hunted goods to the village chief, I was ambushed by a player nicknamed Newbie Butcher who was at level 7, game over. Seeing the screen covered in blood red, I couldn't help but scream. "What happened?" Wonyi jumped at my shout. On the screen, the Newbie Butcher picked up the loot dropped from my character's corpse and even did a dance move to mock me. I furiously pressed the respawn key. I got ambushed in the newbie village, and he's dancing next to my corpse. Wonyi didn't say a word after hearing this. When I recovered from the respawn, I saw a huge monster furiously chasing the Newbie Butcher, landing critical hits and camping at the respawn point. The Newbie Butcher was beaten down to level 1, and that 59-level demon called Invisible Man finally left his corpse and came over to me, a message appearing above his huge demonic horns. "Invisible Man, go dance." At first, I didn't understand until I saw the Invisible Man dancing next to the Newbie Butcher's corpse to mock him. I was dumbfounded and slowly turned my head to look at Wonyi, who had a stern face, then slowly raised a thumbs up. "Awesome, no wonder you're the main character." I suddenly understood why the female lead endured so much suffering and still wouldn't leave Wonyi. Some people really are born with a charm, being terrible at the game. Wonyi simply took me on quests, and as I kept praising him with, "Son, you're so cool. Son, you're so handsome," he gradually lost himself, unable to suppress a small smile. With Wonyi's battle tank paving the way, I easily leveled up to 9, focusing on refining pills while he took care of the monsters, and thus my skill in alchemy reached level 4, but feeling it was too slow, I waved my hand and spent a chunk of money, kitting both me and Wonyi's game characters in top-tier gear from head to toe. Funny, I might be unlucky and unfortunate, but I've never been short of money. Wanzai's startup capital all came from my dowry, and his connections also stemmed from my family. What you give, you get back, and the reason I haven't divorced Wanzai immediately is to leave the undivided family assets entirely to Wonyi. So whether that secretary named Wen Xiaowen is truly love-struck or harbors the ambition of picking up victory cheaply, she's made the wrong move. Just as I was momentarily distracted, my screen was covered in blood red again. I had been killed, except for the premium gear. The pills I had painstakingly refined all day were picked up by those 3 demons. "Old lady, what are you daydreaming about?" Wonyi was helping me with a quest when he turned around and found me killed, his tone becoming sharp. "Firstly, I'm your mother, not an old lady, and if you don't want to call me mom, you can call me sister or Guzi. Respect is the basis of communication," I calmly responded. "Secondly, you owe me a knock on the head." Wonyi helped me seek revenge, and those 3 demons, not expecting me to have such a strong bodyguard, were no match for Wonyi. They started pleading in private messages to return my pills, but Wonyi ignored their pleas, his moves still fast and fierce, mercilessly slaughtering them. I noticed Wonyi particularly liked using a finishing move called Bloodthirsty Demon Claw, which tossed opponents into the air and tore them apart, the blood and flesh bursting like fireworks, creating a gruesomely impactful scene. I turned to look at Wonyi, observing his straight mouth corners and his clear, firm gaze. His actions were swift, Devoid of any mercy or hesitation, this child was far too composed, or rather, he was incapable of empathy. I didn't stop him immediately. Instead, I just watched Wang Yi continue until he was satisfied. Perhaps my gaze was too intense because this time Wang Yi didn't target those 3 individuals again, and after those 3 demon clan members resurrected, they threw out a threat, "Bitch, wait for me to bring my guild to gang up on you." Before teleporting away, still unfamiliar with the game, I asked Wang Yi, "What is a guild?" Wang Yi's expression darkened as he explained, "It's like a small group. You can join a guild after reaching level 10. Those people just now were from the Holy Fighters Guild, a recently established guild, but its leader is very powerful, which is why it's thriving rapidly, so, we've landed ourselves in big trouble." "Huh," I realized. "Do you belong to any guild then, son?" "No," Wang Yi scoffed, "those mediocrities aren't worth it." It was somewhat incongruent to hear such words from a grade schooler, but then again, considering he is the future protagonist who could commit atrocities without legal consequences, it all made sense. Thinking I was silent from fear, Wang Yi awkwardly added, "Don't worry, guild leaders are usually very busy and don't have time to pursue personal vendettas, unless that guild leader had encountered something displeasing today and was looking for a way to vent." I stared at the guild leader named Qing Zhe Chen, a cultivator of the human race, and his companion, a white fox demon named Warm Smile, falling into a brief contemplation. That's clearly Wan Zhe Chen and Wen Xiaowen. What a small world. Just finished a confrontation in reality and now, we're clashing online. Qing Zhe Chen, was it you who ganged up on our holy fighters? I was drinking water when I thought of Wan Zhe Chen saying such a middle school-like line with his face. And I couldn't help but spit the water out. Warm Smile, you went too far. A level 59 bullying some level 13s, Wang Yi indifferently typed on the keyboard, "Invisible man." "Oh, so," I wiped the water from my lips, glancing sideways at Wang Yi. He seemed yet to realize that this divine couple was indeed his own father and his future stepmother. I thought about it and decided not to expose them. Instead, I just took another sip, the glass hitting my teeth with a clear and sobering clink. 5 years ago was when Wan Zhe Chen loved me most, and I loved him most in return. Back then, I was utterly infatuated with him, his looks, his talents, his soul, and his devout yet fervent love for me, so much so that when an out-of-control car came hurtling towards us, my first instinct was to push him away. I pushed him away, and then I fell into a coma, in a coma from which I couldn't wake. I helplessly watched him entangle with a so-called substitute and eventually become a couple. Did I love him? Yes, I loved. Did I hate him? Yes, I hated. But all that love and hate, 5 years was enough to erode them away. Now, my heart is calm, unusually calm, calm like a lake that freezes over on a winter night, undisturbed by any storm above. Only Wang Yi, he is the little fish in my lake. I don't regret bringing him into this world, and I want to accompany him as far as I can in this limited life. Feeling unnerved under my gaze, Wang Yi frowned, glancing at me then quickly looking away. "Grandma, don't keep staring at me. If they attack, you run, hear me?" I just nodded. With Wan Zhe Chen being a demigod at level 74 and even Wen Xiaowen's fox demon at level 36, I didn't think I could escape. Sure enough, as soon as the fight began, Wan Zhe Chen and Wen Xiaowen coordinated perfectly. Wan Zhe Chen aimed directly at Wang Yi, while Wen Xiaowen cut off my escape route. However, Wang Yi and I were more in sync. Wang Yi forcefully endured a hit from Wan Zhe Chen, and ignoring Wen Xiaowen's attack, I quickly threw a healing pill to Wang Yi. At the same time, Wang Yi dodged and executed a combination of 3 moves, instantly killing Wen Xiaowen. Suddenly, the situation shifted to 2 against 1. Wan Zekan was clearly taken aback for a moment, then with a move, he traded his injured self for me in a barely face-saving 1-for-1 exchange, as I transformed into a corpse in front of Wang Yi. He remained unmoved and simply focused on healing himself. His calm composure was evident through the screen, his dark eyes clear and piercing. Then the real battle began. Wan Zekan, at level 74, should have easily overpowered Wang Yi at level 59, however, Wang Yi maximized the advantages of the demon race, fighting in an unconventional and cunning manner. Despite being severely injured, he managed to hold his own against Wan Zekan for half an hour, while lying dead. I simply had the caretaker bring some snacks and munched on sunflower seeds while exclaiming at the excitement of the duel. Naturally, with the level difference between them, no miracle occurred in the end. Wang Yi was killed by Wan Zekan. the massive corpse of the demon race lay like a dark mountain in front of the celestial-like human race. Its silent, intimidating presence felt even through the screen. After watching this intense father-son duel, I didn't forget to interview Wan Yi about his post-battle thoughts. "Son, what do you think about that person named Qing Zhe Chen?" Wan Yi withdrew his hands from the keyboard, his face expressionless. "Mediocre. Perfect." Pleased with Wan Yi's filial piety, I handed him a handful of sunflower seeds. "And what about your mom?" "Terribly weak," he mumbled. Wan Yi tried to dodge my feeding, but I still managed to stuff his mouth with seeds, silencing his filial remarks. Even before Wan Zekan had come to seek retribution, many onlookers had gathered. Now that Wan Zekan had killed Wan Yi, members of the Holy Battle Army cheered, praising the chairman's might. Previously, those three demons were even more vociferous, demanding that Wan Zekan fight me and Wan Yi. However, Wan Zekan didn't act as expected. He waited for Wan Yi to resurrect and then extended an olive branch. "Qing Zhe Chen, you have some skills, why not join our Holy Battle Army? I'll overlook the past incident where you attacked my men, and I can help you fully utilize your talents in our army." I raised an eyebrow at Wan Zekan's magnanimity and vision. No wonder he rose from Little Wan to Chairman Wan in just 5 years, while Wan Yi, cheeks bulging with seeds, didn't even think before typing his response. "Invisible man, no." This blunt refusal instantly angered the crowd. Members of the Holy Battle Army cursed Wan Yi for his ignorance and ingratitude. Unable to believe he dared refuse their invitation after being defeated by their chairman, as tensions seemed to rise again, it was time for Wen Xiaowen to step in. She approached my game character, Wen Yi Xiao. "Sister, I see you might be new here. Would you like to join our Holy Battle Army? If you're into healing, our guild offers free resources and materials." Cute smile. "System. Player Wen Yi Xiao invites you to join the guild Holy Battle Army. Do you accept?" As this invitation popped up on the screen, my hands full of sunflower seeds, I hesitated to let go but then managed to click the mouse with my pinky. Click, agree. "System. Player Ziyu has joined the guild Holy Battle Army." Wan Yi swallowed his seeds, frowning at me. "If it was a mistake, you can apply to leave the guild." I didn't make a mistake. I flicked another handful of seeds towards him, clapping my hands clean. "It's tough to gather materials, and since joining gets them for free, why not join?" Besides, joining also meant first-hand updates on the thrilling, dominant CEO and his delicate secretary's untold stories. I kept this last comment to myself, my lips curled in a mocking smile. Upon joining, I noticed a new golden tag above Wen Xiaowen's head, "Chairman's wife." Looking at the chairman tag over Wan Zekan's head, I felt like something green should fittingly appear above mine too. Wen Xiaowen, twisting her enchanting fox demon figure, made a friendly gesture towards me. Wen Yi Xiao, "Chairman's wife, welcome to our big family." Winking face. Her ambitions couldn't be clearer. I typed a response. "Ziyu, 6, Wan Yi," munching seeds like a little hamster, suddenly choked, finally understanding why I chose the name Ziyu, because Ziyu is always right. Since he doesn't want to join the Holy Warriors, just let it be. There's no need to beg him so meekly. "Oh, can't bear to let him go." Confucius says, "May I ask, are you two a couple in real life as well?" As I asked this, someone from the Holy Warriors quickly responded, "Come on, no, our guild leader and his wife are first-time online daters, just like elementary school kids falling in love. Oh my, it's too sweet every day." "Know it all. Welcome to join our Holy Warriors. We have enough dog food to make you full." Search and search. I heard that our guild leader is actually a big CEO in real life. It's like overbearing CEO falls for me walked into reality. I'm totally dazzled. Wen Xiaowen seemed a bit embarrassed by the teasing and voluntarily let go of Wan Zekan's hand, creating some distance between them. Wen smiles. "Not really, Wan and I only got married for a system reward. We haven't even officially met offline yet," she said, pointing to her fingers. Wan Zekan simply pulled the distance back between them without saying a word, seemingly agreeing by default. Wow. This information overload is frying my CPU. Does this mean that in the game, Wan Zekan and Wen Xiaowen don't know each other's real identities? Lord Zekan, Wan Zekan, Wen smiles. Wen Xiaowen, are these two really that naive? It's so obvious, can't they see? In disbelief, I pointed to the screen. "Son, have another close look at their nicknames. Do you realize who they are?" Wan Yi frowned and scrutinized for a moment, impatiently saying, "There are so many people playing this game. How would I recognize just any two?" I was immediately reassured. Even Wanyi, the young protagonist, couldn't figure it out. Perhaps this is some kind of narrative inevitability, but if Wan Zekin in real life looks for Wen Xiaowen as a substitute, and they seemingly develop feelings for each other, then in the game, Wan Zekin plays along with Wen Xiaowen and flirts with her as if they were strangers online. Let me think, is this some kind of love triangle, a pink mushroom? Hey. I just saw that the official wants to organize an offline meetup, wouldn't they meet then? Funny, vulgar and, yeah, then I can ship the guild leader and his wife's offline couple. I immediately went online to confirm, and this large meetup organized by the Battle of St. Row was scheduled for next month. Not too far if driven, fervent, go, even if it rains knives I will also go. The guild leader and his wife must come, my shipped couple finally meeting offline, sobbing, let Wan Zekin and Wen Xiaowen meet offline, what a wonderful occurrence, a good thing. With a mindset of loving a spectacle, I immediately spoke up to encourage. Confucius says, if the guild leader and his wife come to the meetup, I'll let the invisible join the holy warriors. The invisible. Wanyi sent a question mark and turned to look at me fiercely. Why use me as a bargaining chip? Seeing this, I couldn't help but reach out and rub his baby fat cheeks. Oh, because you're cute. Wanyi blushed, pursed his lips, and reluctantly typed on the keyboard, the invisible, as she said. This gave Wan Zekin an out, and he finally spoke up, agreeing to participate in the offline meetup. And Wen Xiaowen also stated she would attend on time, thus. Wanyi agreed to Wan Zekin's invitation and officially joined his father's holy warriors. Wanyi's prowess was evident to all, and his joining injected a strong force into the holy warriors. The three vengeful demons, knowing they were in the wrong, strategically fell silent. The guild's atmosphere became harmonious, everyone eagerly looking forward to next month's meetup, curious to see what their comrades in arms looked like, watching everyone support Wan Zekin and Wen Xiaowen. Calling her guild leader's wife repeatedly, a smile naturally formed on my lips, a pure smile, too lazy to even mix in any sarcasm. Wanyi noticed my smile and suddenly seemed unhappy. You seem to care a lot about those two. Yeah, I openly admitted, it's like watching a comedy series, one that keeps on giving. Who cares about all this mushy love stuff? Wanyi huffed and turned his head away, his voice low. You might as well watch me more. What did you say? I pretended not to hear clearly, making a gesture of confusion. Watch who more? Nobody, Wanyi said with a flushed face of embarrassment, getting up to leave. I playfully scooped him up in a monkey fishing for the moon hug, and reached out to tickle his waist. Tell me clearly what you're trying to say, or else I won't let you go, I teased. Initially stiff, Wanyi soon broke into laughter, trying unsuccessfully to maintain his aloof demeanor as he twisted and turned. Tears of laughter streaming down his face. I'm saying, only then did I stop, my hand still positioned under his armpits to prevent any escape. Speak, breathing heavily, his face flushed like a little tomato. Wanyi stammered, you, instead of looking at them, why not look more at me? I'm your son. At the end, Wanyi closed his eyes, his face a mix of embarrassment and indignation as if he was ready to explode. I couldn't help but laugh genuinely. Leaning in to kiss his forehead, that's more like it. When it comes to matters of love, don't whisper or keep it bottled up inside. Think about it, if you hadn't spoken up today and I suddenly died tomorrow, wouldn't you regret it? Only realizing what the touch on his forehead meant, Wanyi's ears began to burn. Hearing my ominous words, he immediately glared and snapped, shut up. I flicked his earlobe gently, one for before, and one for now. Will these two flicks help you remember to speak properly? But Wanyi, ignoring the pain on his head, stubbornly glared back at me. I forbid you to talk like that. You're not going to die. That's such nonsense. I laughed, unable to help myself. I am human, and humans will eventually die. It's the natural order of things. Yet Wanyi stiffened up, his little fists clenched tight, throwing a childlike tantrum for the first time. I don't care, you are not allowed to die. I paused, realizing my analogy might have been too much, scaring Wanyi, a child just coming out of loneliness. Alright, I extended my pinky finger, softening my voice. I promise you, I absolutely won't die this year. Humans are fragile, but also very resilient. Shall we make a pinky promise? Wanyi's eyes slightly reddened, muttering childish under his breath, yet still hooked his pinky with mine. Pinky promise. Hang me for 100 years if I change. Wait, why only a year? Wanyi, catching on late, tightened his grip on my finger. I ruffled his hair vigorously with my other hand, messing up his soft black hair into a bird's nest. Because mom's magic is limited, dear, I can only see a year into the future for now. Maybe after a year, perhaps mom's magic will be strong enough to predict 100 years. Magic, you're just fooling kids. Wonyi finally let go to fix his hair, complaining but finally smiling, as time passed quickly in the game during January. Wanzai-chan also came to visit me multiple times, but I had the caretaker turn him away at the door. He thought I was brooding in solitude, angry at him. Little did he know I was actually inside, playing games with Wonyi enthusiastically. Faced with cold treatment from his so-called first love, Wanzai-chan had no choice but to shift his infatuation to a game character, a gentle and considerate tender smile, who required no commitment, as each indulged the other. Their flirtation quickly escalated to a point where even a passing dog would leave belching. Sometimes I would take screenshots as evidence, but mostly I found it too cringe-worthy and focused instead on leveling up and spending money lavishly. Soon, my ability to spend money leveled me up to 69, making me the first person in the entire service area to max out my alchemy skills. Many rare elixirs could only be crafted by me, and for this, people were even willing to use real money to buy from me. With some even harboring lethal intentions. After over a dozen troublemakers died, everyone knew that the alchemy master called Ziyu always had a level 94 demon race character named Invisible Man by his side, quick to retaliate and hold grudges. If you dared touch Ziyu, the Invisible Man would chase you across the server like a mad dog, with a strategy of strike first, show courtesy later. My army quickly expanded, its numbers swelling from a few hundred to over 1,000. Becoming one of the top-ranked guilds, people are drawn to strength, and with my liberal spending, my status in the guild was increasingly overshadowing that of the guild leader's wife. When Xiaowen seemed to feel threatened and tried multiple times to talk to me, but I refused every time. After all, I had already spoken to her in reality and knew well that nothing good could come from her self-righteous mouth. I really don't want to waste my precious gaming time. Yet one day, after waking up from a nap, I saw Wonyi staring at the computer screen with a fierce expression. I yawned lazily and got out of bed. What's wrong? Stuck at a level again. Since I felt I might only live for another year, I hadn't yet told my parents and younger brother in Hong Kong about my awakening. I didn't want to disturb their lives, which had just begun to recover from their grief. For reasons unknown, Wanzai-chan also chose not to disclose my awakening to the outside world. The Mrs. Wan was still a comatose person lying in a private hospital, like a sleeping beauty living through people's filters. In reality, I had long moved out of the hospital, bought a fully furnished villa, moved in directly with Wonyi, and even transformed the bedroom into a gaming room. Starting a shameless life with games, of course. Wonyi, the kid, still had to go to school, and on the matter of self-discipline, I never had to worry about him. When Wonyi was at school, I hired professional players to help maintain his account. Today being the weekend, Wonyi was at home. I leaned over to look at Wonyi's computer screen, which he tried to block, but I pushed his hand away. There, on the official forum of War of St. Luo, was an explosively popular post with a shocking title. Shocking, goddess turns into a shameless mistress. The great Master Dan says, all my drowsiness vanished instantly. Mistress, who, me? Wonyi clicked his tongue hard, trying to cover my eyes. It's all slander from rubbish people, nothing worth seeing. I know. I grabbed his hand, but knowing your enemies gives you an advantage. Your mom isn't that fragile. Wonyi pursed his lips in silence. I scrolled through the mouse. Reading quickly, the post was long, with pictures and seemingly factual, the commentary highly manipulative and incendiary. Essentially, it claimed that after joining the Saint Fighters, I had secretly seduced the leader Qing Zeliangchen and, taking advantage of my position, isolated the rightful leader's wife Wen Xiao. The accompanying picture showed me publicly rejecting Wen Xiaowen's chat, with Wen Xiaowen's game character looking down, appearing helpless and pitiful. Further down, the comments stirred up the crowd, overwhelmingly sympathizing with Wen Xiao and cursing me. Many accused me of being cheap and desperate, suggesting that the money I spent in the game was likely earned through unsavory means. The insults were as harsh as they could be. Wonyi couldn't stand it anymore, slammed the webpage shut, and looked down, biting his lip in silence. I softened, squatting down to look him in the eye. Let me guess. You're thinking you couldn't protect me. Feeling angry and guilty. If it had been the old Wonyi, he would have remained silent, keeping his troubles to himself. But after a month of my guidance, He slowly began to express his inner feelings and slowly nodded. Once the dam of his emotions was opened, tears welled up in Wanyi's eyes. He felt indignant and more aggrieved. Sympathizing with my plight and upset with himself for not being able to think of a way to alleviate this injustice immediately. No matter how talented Wanyi was, he was still just a kid. I rubbed his head, encouraging his honesty, urging Wanyi to look into my eyes. It's good to cherish others and want to protect those important to you, but you also need to know that I'm not just a decoration. I have my own strengths. You can trust me, and rather than your guilt, I need your trust more. Wanyi listened intently and then nodded resolutely. I smiled with relief. Son, enduring for a moment leads to ovarian cysts. Stepping back causes breast hyperplasia. Do you know what the strongest counterattack is? Wanyi shook his head, puzzled. The strongest counterattack is when you don't argue or make a scene, you just stand there gracefully, and everyone else will end up proving you right. Although the post was deleted within 2 hours of its publication, it had already reached tens of millions of views before being taken down. By the next day, almost everyone attending the War of St. Louis meetup was aware of it. The officials of War of St. Louis were quite creative, providing all attendees with a custom headband topped with a flashing sign, as if straight from a game. Everyone displayed their own nicknames above their heads. Thus, when Wen Xiaowen, nicknamed Warm Smile, appeared, everyone warmly sympathized and greeted her as the club president's wife. Wen Xiaowen's in-game avatar, a seductive fox spirit with prominent curves, contrasted sharply with her innocent and endearing real-life appearance, which naturally elicited sympathy and admiration from the students around her. This discrepancy caught the attention of all the male players, who couldn't take their eyes off her. The atmosphere reached a climax when Wan Zekin, the CEO of Yugong Trade Group, made his entrance. The moment his nickname Qing Zhe Chen was spotted above his head, the whole room erupted into screams. Amidst the screams, Wan Zekin's eyes were fixed only on Wen Xiaowen. Their eyes met, both noticing the nicknames above each other's heads, sparking a moment of surprise and understanding, and a deep, soul-stirring affection whirled into their hearts. It's you, it's really you, as if ordained by heaven, surpassing all others. They smiled at each other, as if their souls were embracing tightly. Around them, the crowd went into a frenzy, whispering excitedly, "Ah, what kind of divine romance is this? It's like a CEO romance novel come to life. I'm totally shipping this." But I heard Mr. Wan comes from a well-connected family, and his wife is supposedly a high-profile lady. I remember his wife was in a car accident and became comatose. It's been years. She must be dead or they must have divorced by now. I know his wife's name is Guzi. Before the accident, she was known as the lady. I've seen her photos. She looks a lot like Wen Xiaowen but with more grace. Such a tragic beauty. Well, there's nothing you can do if she's in a vegetative state. You can't stop someone from moving on to someone better. Since all cell phones were confiscated by the officials, people couldn't go online to verify facts or record anything. So you can imagine the scene when Wan Zekin and Wen Xiaowen were sweetly together. And the crowd was anxious. Just as Ziyu and Invisible Man Wanyi made their dramatic entrance, the whole room felt like a bomb had been dropped. Holy shit, what the hell? That Invisible Man who tortured me in the game is just a little kid. Wait, isn't that the lady? If she is Ziyu, then who's the real mistress? Amidst the uproar, my eyes narrowed slightly and locked onto Wan Zekin's ashen face. His expression was more horrified than if he had seen a ghost at midnight. As for Wen Xiaowen, she collapsed to her knees in shock. The crowd scattered as if avoiding a plague, leaving her kneeling alone awkwardly in the center. I smirked and turned to Wanyi. How does this civilized face-slapping feel? Wanyi snorted indifferently. Meh, Ozzy, listen to me. Let me explain. Wan Zekin was pale, trembling as he tried to approach me, his steps unsteady. Just then, Wen Xiaowen suddenly vomited. She threw up violently, instinctively protecting her stomach. Everyone present was an adult, except for Wanyi. But even at his young age, Wanyi recognized the issue immediately. She's pregnant, Wanyi coldly declared. I raised an eyebrow and glanced at the stunned Wan Zekin. Is that your explanation? Wan Zekin's eyes were vacant. He finally collapsed to the ground in utter defeat. Disgusting, I muttered, pulling Wanyi along to leave. Let's go. Mom will take you to the amusement park. Humph, childish. Wanyi didn't even glance back at Wan Zekin. His nominal father, having lost all expectations, just held my hand tighter. I suppose I'll just have to accompany you, he conceded. After a whole day of fun at the amusement park, I woke up sore the next day, still in my pajamas, rubbing my eyes as I walked into the living room. There sat Wen Xiaowen, who had been waiting for 2 hours after I had called her. As I entered the living room, Wen Xiaowen's already straight back tensed even more, like a resilient little plant braving the harsh winter. I lazily sprawled on the sofa, and the maid brought over some perfectly warm tea. I leisurely sipped the tea, clearly seeing Wen Xiaowen struggling to swallow even a sip of water for 2 hours. I set down the teacup and pulled out a checkbook, scribbling and drawing with a pen. She then tore off the paper with a snap and slapped it onto the table. Just as if she had been waiting for this moment, Wen Xiaowen snatched the check from the table like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey, tearing it into shreds with great satisfaction. "Forget it, no matter how much money you offer, I will not leave Chen. Our love cannot be measured by money," she declared, proudly puffing out her chest. Wen Xiaowen continued, "I'm not like you, I've never cared about Chen's money, I love his soul. We are true soulmates." I just owed and took another bite of the snack the housekeeper brought in, stung by my indifferent demeanor. Wen Xiaowen clutched her stomach, her eyes reddening. "I know you're just pretending not to care, you love Chen, but even in the game, Chen and I would be drawn to each other's souls. He truly loves me, you're just jealous." With the demeanor of a victor, Wen Xiaowen stepped on the shredded check, laughing heartily. "You try to insult me with dirty money and force me and the child in my womb away from Chen. But dream on. I, Wen Xiaowen, am not like you. I won't be swayed by money. Even if Chen were a beggar, I would still love him." I swallowed a small cake, rather speechless. "Seriously, why should I give you money? Just look at what's written on the check." Wen Xiaowen froze, then looked down at the check beneath her feet with a strange expression. The messy pieces of the check clearly spelled out 4 words, "Depend on the defense." Wen Xiaowen's face turned green as if she had truly stepped in something disgusting. Just then, Wang Yi came in wearing a small apron, holding a tray of freshly baked cookies, and sighed in resignation. "Guzi, you're so childish." I clapped my hands and picked a cookie that wasn't too burnt. "Anyway, no matter what I say, you won't listen. Let your soulmate tell you in person." With that, I pushed the half-closed door fully open, revealing a much-aged Wan Zaichen outside. Seeing Wan Zaichen, Wen Xiaowen first looked shocked, then joy mixed with shyness appeared. Although she had been emotionally charged just now, she hadn't said a wrong word. It could even be considered a passionate confession. However, Wan Zaichen didn't look at her, he just stared at me pleadingly. I was really drunk that night, I thought she was you." I stuffed another burnt cookie into Wan Zaichen's mouth. "Stop it, until this mess is sorted out. You gang's funds will remain frozen." Wan Zaichen, unable to spit out the charred cookie or swallow it, finally remembered he had a biological son to turn to, mumbling unclearly. Wang Yi coldly cut him off. "This family doesn't need a bastard. If you can't sort this out, then this family doesn't need a father either." That statement was brutally cool. I couldn't help but applaud Wang Yi. Struck hard, Wan Zaichen staggered, his face turned red, filled with anger and unwillingness, but in the end, all he felt was heartbreak and despair. The once confident and radiant man now wilted like autumn leaves. I didn't bother to watch his performance, issuing a directive. "Wan Zaichen, I'm taking my son to the registry office to change his surname. When we return, if you've sorted this out, I might consider keeping you at Yu Gang." Hearing this, Wan Zaichen's eyes lit up like a dog. A begging dog, he rushed inside, stepping fiercely on the pile of shredded checks. From afar, my laughter could be heard. It was nothing. I just fairly mocked everyone who stepped on "Depend on the defense." As the mother of the male lead who started with a boxed lunch, my name clearly shows the author's casual creativity, but at least I like this surname. From then on, Wang Yi changed his name to Gu Yi, his domineering aura even stronger. Before this, I always thought Wen Xiaowen was cunning, especially since she had orchestrated and posted that rumor herself. It turned out she knew all along that Wan Zaichen was playing Battle of St. Row, and had specifically created an account to pretend to encounter him in the game. And while I originally thought Wen Xiaowen was just looking for a marriage of convenience, it was unexpectedly a pure love motive. Wen Xiaowen earnestly begged Wan Zaichen to quit his job and elope with her, declaring she'd marry him even if he became a beggar. Gu Yi and I rewatched the room's surveillance, seeing Wen Xiaowen's face filled with happiness as she described "You're begging," in the future depicted in "I hold the bowl." Wan Zeken's expression was so ugly, it was as if he had eaten something foul. I had originally thought that Wan Zeken, torn between his beloved and his destined partner, would be driven mad by the situation, unexpectedly, without hesitation. One half coaxed and half forced Wen Xiaowen to go to the hospital for an abortion. I turned off the surveillance, closed my eyes, and felt an overwhelming wave of weariness wash over me. It was like the ice on a lake cracking open, the cold air seeping in and deepening the chill of sorrow. At that moment, a warm touch covered the back of my hand. Mom. Guyi looked at me anxiously, holding the back of my hand. He opened his mouth, his voice nervous and unfamiliar, painfully tugging at my heart. Mom, Mom, I froze. Then felt warmth well up in my eyes. Yes, Mom, yes, Mom. Yes, Mom, yes, I'm here, Guyi cried, like a true child. He finally dared to cry unrestrainedly in the face of unconditional love. Mom, 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 Mom. Guyi called out repeatedly, like a fledgling bird, and I responded over and over, each reply sincere and heartfelt. He sobbed uncontrollably, struggling to breathe, clutching my hand as if grasping a dream-like salvation. Mom, I love you so much. Thank you, I cried too, my tears like the melting ice on a lake. They say God cannot be everywhere. That's why mothers were created. Given the limited time, I need to address 3 matters. First, when Xiaowen ran away, Wan Zekan had tricked her into going for an abortion, but at the last minute, when Xiaowen changed her mind and fled, Wan Zekan was so upset that he cursed Wen Xiaowen's ancestors in the hospital. It was quite a scene. And I wasn't surprised to hear this news. The novel's irresistible force was at play. No way could the pivotal antagonist's illegitimate child be easily dismissed. Don't worry, Mom, 7-year-old Guyi reassured me, patting my hand with a smile that was eerily chilling. If he dares to bother us, I'll make him regret being born. Me, with the future male protagonist speaking out, how could I dare to make a sound? Second, Wan Zekan was thrown into the sea. The incident at the Battle of St. Luo meetup was leaked. My family in Hong Kong heard about it and came straight over, tying up Wan Zekan to throw him into the sea to vent their anger on my behalf. However, due to the novel's irresistible force, Wan Zekan must survive until Guyi is grown, so, he was thrown down, then surfaced, sunk again, and surfaced, back and forth until my research scientist brother took him back to Hong Kong for human experiments. He really was superfluous. This also marked a new method of revenge against a scoundrel. Third, I'm getting sleepy again. My daily sleep durations are getting longer, and even the best doctors are powerless. It's all because of the plot's irresistible force. A year is almost up. This year has been quite carefree for me. My only regret is probably that I can't accompany Guyi any further, and Guyi has grown a lot this year, though he fundamentally lacks empathy, after sleeping for an entire day and night. I finally thought of a solution. Son, before you deal with someone, first consider whether this person has a mother. If you think they do, imagine whether your actions would make their mother sad, but if it seems like they don't have a mother, then don't hold back. Guyi understood and remembered this. That night, I had a dream where Guyi met and fell in love with the female protagonist, their relationship healthy and warm, free from the tragedy of a marital chase, leading to a happy ending. I woke up with a contented smile. Just as dawn was breaking, Guyi was lying next to my bed, his pinky finger hooked with mine, his face streaked with tears. I tenderly watched his sleeping face and suddenly remembered, long ago, he had also closed his eyes and entered my world like this, such a tiny bundle of joy, and yet, he truly tripped me up for a lifetime. I couldn't help but sigh deeply. Fortunately, there will always be someone who appears and ignites the fire within your heart. Guyi woke up at some point, his eyes tearing up from the bright light, but he continued to gaze at me intently. Can't that person be Mom? I paused, looking out at the bright and splendid day outside the window, and finally, smiling, I ruffled his hair. Your own story is about to begin. Mom's magic has vanished. Mom only exists in the past. I closed my eyes, feeling as though I had been in a very long dream. In the dream, the lake froze and then melted. The clouds in the sky gathered and then spread out. At last, I dreamed I turned into a little red fish, and when I opened my eyes again, I was no longer anyone's wife or mother. If my life is still like a novel, then I can only be myself. Is that okay? Story 2. When the kidnappers forced Shen Xingchuan to choose between the two of us, he chose me over his childhood sweetheart, Xiao Qingmei, but I didn't leave with him, because I knew he would regret it. In my past life, after I was rescued, Xiao Qingmei was humiliated by the kidnappers who took inappropriate photos of her, and she ended her life on the night she returned. Shen Xingchuan pretended not to care, proceeded with our wedding as planned, but made me suffer throughout our marriage. 7 years later, I finally forced him to agree to a divorce, but on our way to finalize it, he lost control of his emotions and drove the car off a cliff. Even in his last moments, he blamed me. We owed Xiao Xiao. We should have atoned for her in this life. How could you be so selfish? So, given another chance, I didn't want to live that way again. Wei Wei, come with me. Realizing I had been reborn at the moment the kidnapper was holding a knife to mine and Tang Xiaxia's necks, they demanded Shen Xingchuan choose one of us to save. His gaze shifted between us, and after a fierce internal struggle, he made the same choice as in his past life. He reached out to me, but I firmly shook my head. Shen Xingchuan, save Tang Xiaoxiao first. This time, I didn't want to owe anyone anything, nor did I want to live bearing the guilt of someone's death. Shen Xingchuan seemed relieved by my words. Wei Wei, you are my fiancé, I should save you first, but since you've said this, don't blame me. Then he quickly left the scene with Tang Xiaoxiao, as if afraid I might change my mind, but I'm not like him, I don't regret my choices afterwards. In the previous life, he brought the money. But the kidnappers raised the price at the last minute, saying they could only take one person first. Shen Xingchuan had no choice but to choose me, but during the time we went back to gather more money, the kidnappers, taking advantage of the situation, took inappropriate photos of Tang Xiaoxiao and were about to assault her. Fortunately, we arrived in time with the police, even though they didn't go through with it. The mere situation had already stripped a young girl of her dignity. Tang Xiaoxiao returned home distraught and ended her life by wrist-cutting at night when everyone was asleep. By the time she was found, it was too late. Shen Xingchuan, upon hearing the news, showed no signs of care. He calmly handled Tang Xiaoxiao's funeral arrangements and compensated her family generously. Even when I suggested postponing the wedding, he flatly refused. Wei Wei, marrying you has always been the plan. It shouldn't be affected by outsiders, yet. The outsider he mentioned haunted him for 7 years. Marrying me was just to trap me, to make me atone for Tang Xiaoxiao. But what was my fault, too? After Shen Xingchuan left with her, I started figuring out how to save myself, because this time, I wasn't sure if Shen Xingchuan would come back for me. In the previous life, he had slipped a tracker into Tang Xiaoxiao's pocket while hugging her. Thus, even when the kidnappers changed locations, we could locate Tang Xiaoxiao immediately, but just now, it seemed he had forgotten all about it. I guess, from the beginning, the person he wanted to save was always Tang Xiaoxiao. It was only because of my status as his fiancé and fear of being criticized by others that he reluctantly chose me. After all, our engagement was just a union of families. Our feelings for each other were never that deep. While Tang Xiaoxiao had been with him during his most innocent years, they were childhood sweethearts and true confidants. It's only natural that Shen Xingchuan from a past life would have regrets. In this life, he finally got his wish. I'm happy for him. Meanwhile, I didn't forget to look for an opportunity to escape. I knew that when the kidnappers moved locations, they'd pass by an auto repair shop. The mechanics inside were known for their fierce and ruthless fights. In my past life, when the kidnappers passed by, they tried to temporarily occupy the repair shop, but didn't anticipate the tough-as-nails owner who flatly refused. The group ended up in a fierce brawl. The kidnappers probably never dreamed that there were people even more fearsome than them. Eventually, fearing the situation might escalate, they had no choice but to flee in disgrace. Later, when the kidnappers were caught, the repair shop owner came forward to testify. Just like in my previous life, they left one person in the car to watch over me. The rest rushed towards the repair shop. My hands were tied behind my back, and the kidnapper in the driver's seat completely underestimated me. I took advantage of his inattention and bit open the car door handle with my mouth. Then I pushed the door open and ran forward like mad. My destination, like the kidnappers, was also the auto repair shop. I was betting that they wouldn't stand by and watch me perish, so I charged in brazenly. Inside the shop, chaos reigned. I immediately spotted the young owner of the repair shop. His features were sharp and his presence commanded a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness, coupled with his nimble movements. He exuded an indescribable coolness. Afraid of being accidentally hurt, I sprinted over to him with lightning speed, but I used too much force and ended up knocking him to the ground. When I fell into his arms, my face turned pale with fright. Sorry, so sorry, I stammered an apology. Could you please help me? The man glanced at me, his eyebrows knitting together. The next second, he rolled on the ground with me several times. Then, with a loud bang, a chair fell right where we had just lain. If he hadn't acted quickly, I probably would have been seriously injured, still shaken. The kidnappers realized I had escaped. What started as a territorial dispute now turned into a kidnapping situation. Both sides faced off. I looked up at the man beside me and whispered, "If you can save me, I'll do anything." But he didn't respond, instead pondering the group of kidnappers. Someone from behind couldn't help but remind him, "Chinyi, it's better to mind your own business." So his name was Chinyi. As my heart slowly sank without a response, I thought, why force the issue? When the leader of the kidnappers called me over for the third time, I started walking towards them, but soon, a hand pressed on my shoulder. I was forced to stop. Chinyi stepped forward and said to the kidnappers, "She's under my protection today." Perhaps even the heavens were on my side, as suddenly the roaring sound of motorcycles was heard outside. Chinyi's face broke into a confident smile. "My backup has arrived." Hearing this, the kidnappers glared at me unwillingly and walked away cursing. My heart, which had been in suspense, finally settled. I silently sighed in relief and felt my wrists being freed. Chinyi had cut the ropes binding my hands. "I'm Linwei. Thank you for what you did just now." I extended my hand towards him. Chinyi, however, kept staring at my wrist, where the ropes had left marks. It looked quite alarming. "Let me take care of that for you." I shook my head. "It's just a minor injury. No big deal." "Wasn't it you who said that you'd do anything as long as I could save you?" Without further discussion, he pressed me down onto a stool and fetched the first aid kit. "Bear with me for a moment." I bit my lip, watching him intently as he treated my wound. A sudden warmth filled my heart. I remembered in my past life, shortly after I married Shin Xingchuan, there was an incident where he got drunk. As I helped him back to the room and suggested he drink less, he became furious and pushed me away violently. I lost my balance and fell to the ground. The jade bracelet on my wrist shattered as it hit the floor, and the fragments cut into my wrist. I screamed in pain, clutching my bleeding wrist. Seeing this, Shin Xingchuan just stared at me coldly and said, "Does it hurt? Good." Xiao Xiao suffered far more than you ever could, yet she can no longer feel pain. If it weren't for trying to save you, how would she have ended up humiliated by the kidnappers? How could she have become so desperate? I sat there on the ground, in utter disbelief. My heart grew colder bit by bit. It took a long time before I could find my voice again. "But, the kidnappers took me and Tang Xiaoxiao to threaten you. It was your choice to save me first. Why are you saying these things to me now?" The drunken look on Shin Xingzhou's face seemed to have faded, but his gaze was still icy. "Linwei, I was actually against this arranged marriage from the start. If you hadn't told Grandma that you liked me, she wouldn't have forced me to marry you. So, what you mean is, if it weren't for me, you would only need to save Tang Xiaoxiao. Ha ha." I suddenly burst into laughter. "Shin Xingchuan, you're being ridiculous, blaming me instead of the kidnappers." I stood up and went back to my room to tend to my wound myself. From that day onwards, no matter how much it hurt, I never spoke to Shin Xingchuan about it again. Now, the person in front of me was clumsily blowing on my wound, afraid that I was in pain. With a sour feeling in my eyes, I closed them and took a deep breath, knowingly asking, "What are you doing?" Chinyi looked up, his smile pure. "When I was a child and got hurt, my mom would do this to ease the pain. Does it feel a bit better?" I nodded. "Yes, much better." Encouraged by my response, Chinyi continued what he was doing. But the peaceful moment was soon interrupted. "Brother Chin, I heard someone was causing trouble at your repair shop, so I rushed over." "Where did you find such a charming girl?" A tall man with tattooed arms entered the door and immediately his eyes lit up at the sight of me. "It's really rare. I think this is the first time I've seen such a beautiful girl here." As the tattooed man spoke, a shy smirk crawled across his face. Seeing this, Chinyi stepped in front of me. "Thanks, but the issue has already been resolved. As for anything else, it's none of your business. I'll treat you to a drink another day." The tattooed man was taken aback, then realized the situation. "Old Chin, now that you've got a girl, can't even deal with your own brother." He turned his head away haughtily and huffed loudly. It seemed like he was angry. Chinyi rubbed his forehead and then pulled him aside, whispering, "Can't you be more observant? Just go wherever it's cooler." "Brother Chin, is she your girlfriend?" "Does it look like it?" "They look like a perfect match at first glance. You know what's what." "Kid, I don't care. You have to treat me to some wedding candies. You won't miss out." The two not far away kept whispering, though they tried to keep their voices down. Their words still clearly reached my ears. To ease the awkwardness, I pretended to be very busy, looking left, right, up, and down, just not daring to look at them. A few minutes later, Chinyi had coaxed the tattooed man away. After he left, Chinyi asked me, "Where do you live? I'll take you home." Maybe out of selfishness, I suddenly didn't want to go home so quickly. After all, my parents are busy with their own affairs all year round, and even if I didn't go home for a month, they wouldn't ask. As for Shen Xingchuan, if I guessed right, he was probably reborn too. He must be eager to spend his life with Tang Xiaoxiao now. In my previous life, after being married to him for 7 years, he never took me to any event, nor did we share a room. When others asked about me, he always responded coldly, eventually turning me into a joke in our circle. This lifetime, I might as well stay far away from him, so, I pleaded with Chinyi, "Could you let me stay with you for a few days?" My fingers carefully clutched at the hem of his shirt, shaking it slightly. Considering both lifetimes, he should be a good person. And he also had the capability to protect me. Would he refuse if I imposed on him? Suddenly, Chinyi looked down at me, his gaze burning intensely. "Little girl, if you keep this up, I might take you seriously." Perhaps because the distance was too close, I could even smell the fresh scent of soapberry on him. I swallowed reflexively, about to speak, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "What are you doing?" It was Shen Xingchuan. He had come with the police. "You alright?" Shen Xingchuan looked at me, his concern seeming genuine. I shrugged. "Do I look like I'm in trouble?" Shen Xingchuan fell silent. Tang Xiaoxiao then walked in. She glanced at the now normally operating repair shop and bluntly asked, "Lin Wei, how did you escape from the kidnappers?" "As far as I know, there were 6 of them, your hands were tied, and you were in unfamiliar territory." I'm really curious, what did Tang Xiaoxiao mean by that? Everyone knows that the Lin and Shen families were planning a marriage alliance, but they were also both eyeing that piece of land in the south of the city. With the auction happening in 10 days, the highest bidder wins. But just at this critical moment, this incident happens, and the ransom was frighteningly high. Lin Wei, I really can't help but think crooked. Was she suspecting that I hired the kidnappers? I admit, I've never been so speechless in both my lifetimes. Tang Xiaoxiao's plight in her previous life, I truly feel helpless and sympathetic, but this life, it's as if I saved her. Yet after she was rescued, her first reaction was to bite back at me. It's truly disheartening. Suddenly, I raised my hand. He shouted loudly, "Officer, someone here is slandering me." Then, all of us were taken away. While waiting for the interrogation, Tang Xiaoxiao was relentless. "Why won't you speak?" "Lin Wei," I snorted coldly, "why should I talk to you? You're not a cop." Tang Xiaoxiao was at a loss for words. Shen Xingchuan couldn't stand it anymore and quickly stood up to speak for Tang Xiaoxiao. "Lin Wei, Xiaoxiao is just trying to understand the truth so she knows what to say and what not to say during the interrogation." "What? Are you planning to lie to the police?" Shen Xingchuan, infuriated, stood up and pointed at me, saying, "Lin Wei, you are being completely unreasonable." Chinyi, who just came out of the interrogation room, saw this and immediately stepped in front of me. "Put your hand down." His tone was even, yet it carried an undeniable force. I hid behind Chinyi, unable to see their faces, but I could vaguely smell the tension in the air. Shen Xingchuan asked, "And who are you to her?" Chinyi turned his face towards me, his lips slightly curled. "What do you think?" he countered. I looked up at his nearly perfect profile, and impulsively, with my thumb and index finger, I made a heart shape. Shen Xingchuan saw this and his face darkened several shades. Just then, the police called him to make a statement. After a round of questioning, the situation became somewhat clearer. The police had identified a suspect, and now they needed to catch the kidnapper to proceed with the investigation. But I knew, this was the work of Shen Xingchuan's rival. After leaving the police station, Chinyi looked at me and said, "Okay, what?" I was completely puzzled. He explained, "The thing you asked me about this afternoon, it's okay." I finally understood he was referring to my request for him to let me stay with him. "It's just me and my mom at home, and she's currently at the old house. I usually stay at the repair shop, so feel free to come." I was just about to agree, then Shen Xingchuan chimed in, "Lin Wei, your parents already know about the kidnapping. They must have landed by now and are heading home. Are you sure you don't want to go back?" I couldn't help but feel a pang in my heart. My parents' affairs, Shen Xingchuan, a stranger, knew them better than I did. Ever since I can remember, they've always been busy, too busy to remember my birthday, too busy to attend parent-teacher meetings. I even deliberately failed exams and got myself hurt just to see them because only then would they show up briefly and give me a little insignificant love. Eventually, I stopped hoping and learned to celebrate my own birthdays. Paying a kind florist to attend parent-teacher meetings because she was gentle and looked nice. That's how I grew up alone, until I met Shin Xingchuan. On the school basketball court, he casually blocked a ball that was heading towards me. Under the sunlight, the young man's face was strikingly handsome, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead, shimmering with a crystal-clear luster, with a slight lift of his eyes, carrying a subtle arrogance. He said, "Classmate, be careful," with his cool voice. With just one glance, I was captivated. Back then, I was timid. After muttering a shy thank you, I quickly ran away. From that moment on, I started paying attention to him, intentionally and unintentionally, and learned that he had a close childhood friend, but their relationship seemed to only remain at that innocent stage of childhood friends. My youthful crush was silent, yet it silently spread throughout the depths of my heart. Even accidental meetings or casual exchanges of looks would make my face flush and my heart race. I was well aware that in my future marriage, I likely wouldn't have much say, so, when I found out that my arranged marriage was to be with Shin Xingchuan, I was overjoyed for a long time. My parents thought highly of Shin Xingchuan and often contacted him more than me. In my past life, when I asked for a divorce from Shin Xingchuan, they flatly refused. "Xingchuan is exceptionally capable and tolerates your flaws. Why won't you cherish him and instead make us worry?" I knew that since our marriage, the Lin and Shin families' interests had been intertwined, making divorce not so simple. Thus, I endured year after year until I developed depression and began self-harming, which finally compelled Shin Xingchuan to agree to a divorce. Given a second chance at life, I wanted to truly live for myself. That's why I didn't want to go home. However, I suddenly remembered that there was still something unresolved that needed me to return home. Before leaving, I took Chinya's phone from his pocket, entered my number, and dialed it. Only after hearing the ringing did I return the phone to him. "Remember to save my number. I'll come looking for you in a couple of days." After saying that, I hailed a taxi and left. Throughout, I didn't give Shin Xingchuan a single glance. Upon returning home, I found my parents waiting for me in the living room. Before I could speak, they bombarded me with criticisms. "Xingchuan told us about today. Can't you stop being so willful from now on? That was a kidnapper. You could have been killed, yet you had Xingchuan save someone else first." My mother sighed deeply as she spoke. "How can we trust you to take over the company like this?" They didn't trust me, so in my past life, they handed the company over to Shin Xingchuan. Then they lived worry-free and pursued the dreams of their youth. My father, who had been sitting on the sofa, suddenly spoke up. "Let's get the wedding sorted out soon." "I disagree," I stated firmly. "I came back to tell you that I'm going to the Shin family tomorrow to call off this marriage, whether you agree or not. This time I will make my own decisions. Also, don't try to use the company to threaten me. You can give it to whoever you want. I don't want it anyway, having lived once already." I knew the trends of the next 7 years, so I wouldn't end up destitute. With that, I went back to my room. They must be even more disappointed in me now, but it doesn't matter. The next day, I got up early, but I saw my mother had personally prepared breakfast and was waiting for me. "Heard from Aunt Fawn that you were up looking for food last night. I'm sorry that I didn't prepare enough," she said. "I forgot to ask if you had dinner," my mother said. Surprising me with her sudden gentleness and consideration, she affectionately tucked a stray hair behind my ear and spoke with a tone of self-reproach. "Your father and I reflected last night and realized that perhaps we've been using the wrong approach all along. We wanted you to be independent, so we refrained from pampering you too much, fearing we might spoil you. You want to make your own decisions, and that's fine. We're not insisting you marry into the Shin family." Was this their way of agreeing to me calling off the engagement? Suddenly, I felt a pang of sadness. As a child, I had my share of tantrums and arguments, only to be met with scolding. Later, I began to behave in thought that would earn their attention, but all they did was regard me as weak and incapable. Now, by just mirroring their approach and speaking harshly, they seemed to have changed their perspective. Even as I arrived at the Shin family's villa, I still found it unbelievable. The idea of an alliance through marriage between the Shen and Lin families was initially suggested by Shin Xingchuan's grandmother. It all started when I saved her from fainting due to low blood sugar at a banquet. Grateful, she insisted on acknowledging me as her god-granddaughter. As we became more acquainted, I would occasionally dine at the old Shin house. It was there I met Shin Xingchuan and learned that the old lady was his grandmother, sharp as ever. She immediately noticed my fondness for Xingchuan, which led to everything that followed. Now, the thought of personally discussing the cancellation of the engagement with her felt somewhat unfair. especially since she had given me the Shin family's heirloom bracelet. It seemed I had no choice but to return it. Shin Xingchuan arrived before me, accompanied by Tang Xiaoxiao. They were both dressed formally, which matched the situation since I had called off our engagement, allowing them to possibly get engaged immediately, a situation where everyone could be happy. However, when I placed the bracelet on the table, Shin Xingchuan grabbed my wrist and asked, "What does this mean?" Right, I had only mentioned meeting at the Shin family home last night, without bringing up the breakup. Old lady Shen, sensing something, asked, "Wei Wei, did Xingchuan do something to wrong you?" Her gaze sharply turned towards Tang Xiaoxiao. I respectfully responded to old lady Shen. "Grandma Shen, I want to break off the engagement with Xingchuan." My tone was calm, as if discussing the day's weather. Upon hearing this, Shin Xingchuan's pupils dilated in disbelief. "Why? Because you abandoned me yesterday to save someone else. I thought she must be the one you truly want to marry." I looked at Tang Xiaoxiao, who was staring back at me, her expression defiant. "No." Shin Xingchuan's eyes flickered with self-doubt. "Wasn't it you who asked me to save Xiaoxiao first? I was testing you, and the result is clear." Shin Xingchuan was left speechless. Old lady Shin sighed and said, "I heard about yesterday. You are a good child. Xingchuan doesn't deserve you." "Grandma," Shin Xingchuan suddenly interrupted her. He gripped my wrist tighter, as if trying to crush my bones. "Lin Wei, I will not agree to this. Don't even think about it." The pain from yesterday's injury, exacerbated by his grip, was likely to cause bleeding again. I endured the pain and suddenly found the whole situation rather amusing. In my past life, after Tang Xiaoxiao's death, he mourned for 7 whole years. Having been reborn, he was even more eager to save Tang Xiaoxiao. I thought he was deeply in love with her, eager to marry her right away. I tugged at the corner of my lips and smiled, saying, "If you insist on this, I'll contact the media tomorrow and unilaterally announce the cancellation of our engagement. It will be your Shin family who loses face." After that, I pried Shin Xingchuan's fingers off one by one and turned to leave. I didn't expect Shin Xingchuan to chase after me. Just then, Qin Ye's motorcycle arrived at the Shin residence. Wanting to avoid further entanglement with Shin Xingchuan, I simply said, "Sorry, my boyfriend has come to pick me up." Shin Xingchuan frowned displeasedly and sneered, "Lin Wei, are you sure you want to pick this poor guy as your boyfriend? Can he make you happy? Or should I choose someone like you who is hypocritical and fickle?" After saying that, I walked towards Qin Yi, but the next second, my wrist was grabbed again. "Ouch!" I cried out in pain. Shin Xingchuan, the instigator, then noticed the injury on my wrist. He panicked, trying to explain, I didn't know you were hurt." I lowered my eyes with a sarcastic smile, "As if you would care if you knew." Qin Yi couldn't stand by any longer after seeing this. He rushed up and threw a punch, knocking Shin Xingchuan to the ground with swift and fierce moves. Shin Xingchuan spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes filled with ferocity, but he dared not make any more rash moves. Seeing this, Qin Yi warned, "Stay away from her." Then he put his helmet on my head, started the motorcycle, and took me away. As the motorcycle sped through the mountains, the scenery changed rapidly before my eyes. I leaned on Qin Ye's back, enjoying the thrill of speed. It felt like this could temporarily make me forget the unpleasantness earlier. "Girlfriend, where do you want to go?" Qin Ye's voice came from ahead. I chuckled, realizing he had heard everything I said earlier, so naturally, I wrapped my arms around his waist and said, "Since you called me girlfriend, can I go see your place? I'm quite hungry." "That's not a problem at all, and I'm quite a good cook." "Then I want 4 dishes, definitely arranged." Qin Ye's laughter echoed through the mountains, influenced by him. At that moment, I felt an immense sense of relief. Qin Ye's house was bigger than I expected. He hurriedly brought me a pair of brand new men's slippers. They might be a bit big, but these are the only new pair I have at home. I casually slipped them on and smiled. "It doesn't matter. It's good that I occasionally come back to tidy up. It shouldn't be too messy." Even though he was the host, he seemed the more restrained one. I sat down on the couch, supporting my chin with my hand while looking at him, saying, "I can't cook, so you'll have to work hard today." Instead of cooking right away, Qin Yi brought over a first aid kit. The wound that had been properly dressed yesterday was squeezed by Shin Xingchuan today, causing blood to seep into the bandage, which had dried and stuck to the wound. Qin Yi carefully poured iodine on the bandage, trying to separate the wound from it. Such meticulous work, and yet he, a man, did it very seriously. Half an hour later, he finally redressed the wound. He didn't forget to remind me, don't get it wet for the next few days, I unconsciously said. How am I supposed to bathe? It's okay not to bathe for 2 days. After thinking, he added, I won't mind. You dare. I wouldn't dare. Humph. Shall I start cooking then? Sure, I nodded with a smile. I suddenly realized that every time I was with Chinya, I felt particularly relaxed. An hour later, he had prepared 4 dishes. They were sweet and sour pork loin, garlic shrimp, steamed fish, and cucumber salad. He handed me the chopsticks. Try them. After tasting several dishes, I gave him a thumbs up. Delicious in every aspect, unforgettable just like him. It seems I won't have to worry about finding a good meal in the future. In the afternoon, I received a call from my dad. He wanted me to attend an auction in 10 days, saying that if I could secure the land in the southern part of the city, he would let me take full charge of the company. I was familiar with that plot of land. Besides the Shen and Lin families, several other businesses were eyeing it as well. In my previous life, due to a kidnapping incident, I was greatly traumatized, and the subsequent death of Tang Xiaoxiao left its mark on me. Consequently, I fell seriously ill and missed the auction. Even if I hadn't been ill, I wouldn't have competed with Shen Xingchuan. Back then, my whole heart was filled with him, believing I had found the person I could entrust my life to. However, the Shen family was facing a debt crisis at the time, and it was difficult for Shen Xingchuan to secure the land. Ultimately, I transferred a sum of money from the Lin family to help him. Shen Xingchuan successfully won the bid and built a theme park on the land, attracting many businesses. Within a few years, he had propelled the Shen family to new heights. This clearly showed that the land was a sure-win investment, which explained why so many were after it. This time, I was determined to win it. Unexpectedly, Tang Xiaoxiao came to beg me. Her demeanor was very different from her aggressive attitude a few days ago. This time, she was very humble and pleaded with me in a lowly tone. Can you not break off your engagement with Xingchuan? There has never been anything more than friendship between him and me. If you agree, I will never appear in front of you again. I silently watched her, speechless. Yes, in my previous life, I also thought that they were just good friends, but after Tang Xiaoxiao's death, Shen Xingchuan's behavior was clearly more than just mourning a good friend. I remember the day he agreed to divorce me. It was after my 10th attempt at self-harm due to depression. He came back to find me lying on the ground, covered in blood. He probably feared that I might die in his house, finally agreeing to the divorce. But on the way to get divorced, he suddenly asked me, do you know today is Xiaoxiao's death anniversary? I looked at him blankly and shook my head. I couldn't even take care of myself, let alone remember these dates. But my reaction infuriated Shen Xingchuan. He violently pounded the steering wheel, cursing me for being cold and heartless. Your current life, Xiaoxiao paid for it with her life. Yet you've never been grateful. You even forgot her death anniversary and just thought about leaving. Do you think this will absolve you of guilt? Lin Wei, you truly disgust me. In my anger, I retorted harshly, yes, you are grateful. You can't forget her. Why don't you die with her? Right after my words, the car suddenly swerved uncontrollably, and finally crashed straight down the cliff. Even in his final moments, Shen Xingchuan was still blaming me. We indeed owed Xiaoxiao. He slapped himself on the mouth and muttered, can't I visit without a reason? Look at my foolish lips. Then he flashed a grin at me. Sister-in-law, take a rest. Brother Qin should be back soon. I nodded and sat down on the sofa. On the coffee table, there were several sets of different tea sets. I brewed a pot of tea for myself and savored it slowly. Big Tattoo didn't leave. His face was full of curiosity, and his eyes kept sizing me up. Seeing me make tea myself, he explained, I'm a rough guy. I don't know how to handle these delicate things. Usually, it's Brother Qin who brews it for me to drink. I hope you don't mind. I looked up and asked, what is your name? Lei Yong. Is he good to you? By hearing the sounds, then there's Chen Ping, who handles maintenance and has a limp, and Adon, who does the painting and can't read a single word. When they first came to this city, they were hoping to make a living, but they soon found out that with physical disabilities, no diplomas, and no special skills, even finding a decent job was difficult. It was Brother Qin who took them in, giving them time to learn skills, providing food and accommodation, and even paying them a salary. So a group of people faithfully followed Brother Qin, going nowhere else. So that was it. I looked at Lei Yong again and asked, what about you? Upon hearing this, a serious expression appeared on his face for the first time. I met Brother Qin 5 years ago when I had offended someone and was almost beaten to death. Brother Qin saved me. Since then, I swore I'd follow Brother Chin for life, and if anyone dares to bully him, they'd have to step over my dead body first. Honestly, I was deeply moved by these words. All this time, the environment I was in was lonely, not to mention how few people truly cared about me. Yet Chinyi was able to gather such a group of people, who genuinely and steadfastly followed him. I was truly envious and suddenly very eager to meet him. Do you know where he went? Lei Yong thought for a moment and said, Brother Chin didn't specify a location, just mentioned that someone was looking for him, probably around Tiancheng Square. As I was about to leave, Lei Yong seemed to remember something else and added, by the way, sister-in-law, actually Brother Chin is quite wealthy. He just keeps a low profile. Originally, he didn't want us to call you sister-in-law. He said you come from a wealthy family, so we should address you as Miss. I frowned, wondering why Chinyi would use such an old-fashioned title, but I could never have dreamed that I would see Chinyi sitting with Tang Xiaoxiao in a coffee shop at Tiancheng Square. I didn't know what Tang Xiaoxiao was telling Chinyi, but I saw her eyes were red, as if she had been crying, while Chinyi just listened. His brows furrowed and never relaxed. He sat down directly next to Chinyi from across the table. Intuition told me that there was something complicated between them. If it had been me before today, perhaps I would have just left and blocked Chinyi. After being hurt once, I could no longer tolerate any relationship that wasn't pure. But if it was Chinyi, I wanted to trust him just this once. Just as I was about to enter the coffee shop, I saw Chinyi hastily get up from his seat, as if avoiding something dirty. Then, as I walked into the shop, our eyes met. Compared to my calm demeanor, Chinyi was initially stunned, clearly not expecting to see me there, and then quickly walked towards me. Wei. At this moment, Tang Xiaoxiao also came chasing out, urgency written on her face. Mr. Chin, if you agree, Tang Xiaoxiao's words stopped abruptly upon seeing me. However, she quickly regained her composure and instead turned to ask me, Lin Wei, what brings you here? Could it be that you are also here to see Mr. Chin? She said, consciously leaning towards Chinyi. But Chinyi was vigilant and immediately stepped towards me as she approached. He looked at me somewhat innocently and said, Wei, I pretended to be fierce. We'll deal with this when we get back. Watching our interaction, Tang Xiaoxiao's expression gradually darkened. Lin Wei, I really underestimated you. I shrugged and replied, that's right, I think so too. Tang Xiaoxiao was visibly upset, her face changing colors like a spilled palette, a sight to behold. In truth, I was not one to easily suffer losses. If not for taking those who didn't care about me too seriously in my past life, I wouldn't have ended up in such a mess. 17. Chinyi took me back home. It was already nearly dark. We just sat on the sofa, neither of us speaking. After a long time, he broke the silence. Aren't you going to ask? Didn't you say you'd deal with me when we got back? I spoke softly. If you want to tell me, you will, even if I don't ask. If you don't want to tell me, asking won't help. Chinyi's face was expressionless. Do you know why Tang Xiaoxiao came to see me? I shook my head. On the way back, I thought of many reasons. Perhaps Tang Xiaoxiao had taken a liking to Chinyi, or maybe Shen Xingchuan disliked our closeness and deliberately sent Tang Xiaoxiao to mess with me. After all, they were close and would do anything for each other. But then Chinyi suddenly asked me if I was eyeing the land in the southern part of the city. I was shocked. How did you know? Because the right to use that land is currently in my hands. It was left to me by my father. What a coincidence. Wait, so Tang Xiaoxiao hadn't given up and went straight to Chinyi, trying to get it from him. But how did she know that land belonged to Chinyi? There was only one answer. Shen Xingchuan must have told her. He must have dealt with Chinyi when acquiring land in his past life. Seeing Chinyi staring at me, I suddenly realized something. You don't think that I approached you just for this land, do you? A bitter feeling surged in my heart. It turned out that while I had my reservations about him, people are starting to suspect me. I lowered my head, wanting to laugh, but I just couldn't muster it. Seeing this, Chinyi suddenly lifted my face, looking very serious, and said, Fool. Of course I don't think that way. At first, the thought did flash through my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. I trust my own judgment. I asked, like how you saved Lei Yong and the others. Chinyi slightly raised his eyebrows. No, it's not the same. I saved them out of kindness, but saving you, that was out of love. Chinyi, you really have a way with words. I pouted, slightly complaining. It made me wonder how many others he had charmed like this. Chinyi looked at me indulgently. His hand cradling my face moved slightly, forcing me to lift my head. Then he kissed me, light as a dragonfly touching water. brief and fleeting. It's not about being skilled, it's from the heart, naturally following instinct. I just felt my cheeks burning, and my heartbeat uncontrollable, afraid that my feelings would be noticed. I buried my face in his chest, my ear against his chest. I could hear his heartbeat loud as thunder, deafening, beating out his love for me. I closed my eyes to feel it. And after a long moment, I said, Chinya, I love you just as much as you love me. He didn't reply with words, but his actions spoke volumes. He held me even tighter, as if trying to merge me into his bones and blood. The next day, Chinya handed me a document. Taking a look, I realized it was a land transfer agreement. Surprisingly in my name, Chinya, have you lost your mind? Do you realize what this means? I couldn't believe someone could be so foolish. I've withdrawn the auction. I have what you want. It makes no sense not to give it to you. It was impossible not to be moved. My whole heart felt full and swollen with warmth. I blinked back the tears. This was a happy moment. No time for tears, since he had shown such sincerity. I couldn't let myself be outdone. I took his hand and said as we walked, before we sign, there's a place I want to take you. I led him to the civil affairs office. Chinya kept asking me, are you sure about this? I looked at him with a smile. Aren't you afraid I'll take your things, kick you to the curb, and find someone better looking and richer? Chinya frowned and thought for a moment. Well, richer I'm not sure, but better looking, that would be hard to find. Exactly, so here I am, bringing you here, right? I didn't expect Shen Xingchuan to find us so quickly. Chinya and I had just left the civil affairs office, the marriage certificate still in our hands. Seeing us, Shen Xingchuan's face turned extremely ugly, his fists trembling slightly. He said, Wei, you still ended up with him, whatever. I rolled my eyes, not intending to engage with him, but Shen Xingchuan grabbed hold of me. Tears suddenly streamed down my face. Could these be crocodile tears? But I did have some things I wanted to say to Shen Xingchuan, so I asked Qinyi to get in the car first and wait for me. Once it was just the two of us left, Shen Xingchuan couldn't wait to say, Wei, I regret it, I truly regret it. You can hit me or scold me. I just ask for your forgiveness. I sneered back. Regret? What do you regret exactly? Is it that you didn't save me? Or that you didn't treat me right in our past life? Hearing this, Shen Xingchuan let go of my wrist, his face losing its color in an instant. It seemed that even he didn't want to recall the matters of his past life. After all, those memories clearly revealed his numerous misdeeds. At that moment, Shen Xingchuan began slapping his own face, saying as he did, I was deluded. It was my fault. I deserved to die. But Wei, is there still a chance for us? I paused for a moment, then asked indifferently, Shen Xingchuan, what do you think? He stopped his actions, his eyes drooping, his face defeated. Then, as if struck by a thought, a glimmer of light appeared in his eyes. No, it's Tang Xiaoxiao. It's all her fault. If she hadn't suddenly come back, none of this would have happened. I never asked her to come to you. She did that all on her own, unilaterally. He grasped my hand again, pleading abjectly, can you trust me one last time? The person I've loved from the start is you. Truly, I know I am guilty, so I won't ask for anything. I just beg you to look at me. Even if I have to be your servant. I looked at Shen Xingchuan in horror, unable to believe these words were coming from him. I forcefully withdrew my hand, wiping it on my clothes. Shen Xingchuan, what are you after? I, of course, didn't believe that he truly loved me. Once you've experienced true love, anything less feels like unwanted trash. Shen Xingchuan wore an expression of deep affection. I've realized it too late, but either way, I won't give up on you. I felt a chill. It was almost like being haunted by a ghost. Shen Xingchuan, if you keep this up, I will call the police. Hearing this, Shen Xingchuan froze, tears streaming down his face as if they cost nothing. I just felt annoyed, eager to leave. Shen Xingchuan, you've only ever loved yourself, whether it's Tang Xiaoxiao or me. None matter more than your own interests. But you can't accept it, can you? Why, after leaving you, I could live even better. So you want to drag me back into the abyss again? But Shen Xingchuan, I'm not alone anymore. My current husband is fierce and formidable in a fight, and he has a group of loyal followers. If you think your life is too long, feel free to try and challenge him. After saying this, I glanced at Tang Xiaoxiao not far away. I had noticed early on that she had followed us, but I didn't make it known. I hope she could see Shen Xingchuan's true nature clearly and not be used and still count money for others. It ended like a farce. After my father knew I had successfully acquired that plot of land, he, as promised, handed over the management of the company to me. I didn't tell them about my marriage registration with Chinyi because I didn't want anyone to interfere. I just wanted to peacefully live our life together. Every day I shuttle between work and home, and time just quietly slips away. Soon after, I heard that Tang Xiaoxiao was going abroad. The person who loved Shen Xingchuan the most didn't want him anymore. Before she left, she posted a lengthy article on social media, condemning Shen Xingchuan for his betrayal and cold-heartedness. With nothing better to do, I boosted the post with some traffic. As a result, the already debt-ridden Shen Corporation was further impacted, and its stocks plummeted. It was said to be on the brink of bankruptcy. Shen Xingchuan was frantic, seeking help everywhere. But who would be willing to help him at this time? So, he turned to me again. Several months had passed since we last met. I'm now busy developing a piece of land, energized by the thought of the substantial profits it promises. Shen Xingchuan had changed drastically from the man I saw a few months ago. His face was gaunt, dark circles under his eyes and an unkempt beard, exuding an air of utter defeat. I asked him, "Do you want my help?" Surprisingly, he shook his head. He told me, Wei, I've been suffering from depression. I haven't slept well in months. I now understand the pain you went through. This is my karma. I struggled to suppress a smile and said, "How can this be karma? It's a blessing. Think about it. In your previous life, you regretted not being able to save Tang Xiaoxiao until your death. Even though you were successful and had me by your side, you were still unhappy. Now, fate has given you a chance to start over. Even though you've lost everything, you've resolved your past regrets. That should be enough. Fate has been more than fair to you. People should not be too greedy. Gaining something often means losing something else. You can't have it all." That was the last time I saw Shen Xingchuan. 3 months later, on the night Shen's company declared bankruptcy, Shen Xingchuan, drunk and overwhelmed by depression, drowned in his bathtub. By the time he was found, it was too late. Indeed, what goes around comes around. When Qingyi learned about this while massaging my back, he said, "My father used to tell me, a person with poor character cannot go far." I turned over and couldn't help asking, "Then how far do you think we can go?" Qingyi thought seriously for a moment and replied, "Given our characters, 100 years wouldn't be too much, right?" I wholeheartedly agreed. "Of course, it's not too much. And it wouldn't be too much for your husband to want a good meal, right?" Qingyi looked at me intently, his eyes burning with intensity, reflecting my image like the most exquisite rose in the world. They say loving someone is like tending to a flower. Qingyi cherished me, placing me at the very top of his heart, unwilling for me to suffer the slightest hardship. This only made me strive to be better. Qingyi gave me everything I hadn't received in 2 lifetimes. I wrapped my arms around his neck, kissed him on the lips, and said, "Not too much at all."